Good evening. Welcome to this week's meeting of the Milton Board of Selectmen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I'll go right to item 2, which is the review and approval of minutes. We have no minutes to approve. So at this time, I'm going to confirm item 3, confirm future meeting dates. The board will meet again on Monday, June 11th, 2018, Monday, June 25th, 2018, and July 9th, 2018. If anyone has any conflicts on any of these, if you could just email Emily ASAP, that would be very good. But I think we should be okay. Item number 4, citizens speak. I just want to remind all citizens as they approach to speak to state your name and your address. If you do, we'll have a sign-in sheet for you to sign on. And do we have anyone tonight to speak at Citizens Speak?
Richard, before we get to that, I forgot to ask, the board retreat is this Saturday. Is that,
yes.
That's confirmed? Could we just mention that for the public's benefit?
Going back to item, we do have a board retreat this Saturday, June 2nd, I believe. Is it 9 a.m.?
9 a.m.
9 to 1. And that will be held at Curry College.
That agenda will be posted Thursday morning.
Okay?
But we're expecting that it's going to include things like communication,
Yes.
goals and objectives.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Our town planner, Mr. Clark, you don't have to sign in.
Thank you.
You know where you live.
I've been asked by the planning board chair to give a quick update to some of the stuff that's happening with the planning board and its coming meetings. And it has nothing to do with what's on that screen. The planning board is considering several zoning articles for a fall town meeting that may be of interest to some of the Board of Selectmen and the public. The ongoing efforts will be posted on the town's website under the planning board. Next planning board meeting will be on June 7th, 7 o'clock at Tucker School. The potential for zoning changes for 2 areas will be discussed. One is going to be the Brook Road, Blue Hill Parkway, Thatcher and Laurel corner. It's the Knights of Columbus property with several other properties in a potential overlay. I'm reading the wrong one. The second is the Milton Village Business District. The area has been studied by MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and the Master Plan Implementation Committee. For the last year, it's being referred to the Planning Board for future action, hopefully a zoning change. It's also looking at waterfront access. Additionally, the Planning Board is initiating a process to study mixed-use overlay for the East Milton Square area that could lead to proposed zoning for the spring 2019 town meeting. And lastly, the Planning Board is supportive of a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen regarding the Falcone project in the East Milton Square, perhaps on June 21st.
And everyone's aware of that, correct? Okay, and we'll confirm that meeting as well. Let's get that one confirmed very quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for citizens speak? Thank you. This time I'm going to move to item 5, a conference with Sarah Callahan and the Milton Youth Advocates. This is a follow-up to a meeting, an appearance by Park Commissioner Regina Malley's comments, which took place at Citizens Speak on our May 2nd meeting. Sarah of the Milton Youth Advocates has requested time to speak with us, and she's going to present this on our Milton Youth Advocates, her proposal.
I think so.
Yeah. Just gonna let it boot up.
I can start by introducing myself, Sarah Callahan, member of Milton Youth Advocates. I'm at 111 Elm Street, and I'm joined by Margaret Carrolls, who will introduce herself in a bit, and Isabel Smith, a high school student at Milton High School, who's going to offer her perspective. First and foremost, we really just want to thank you all for inviting us to be here. As you mentioned, it's a follow-up to a brief introduction that Regina Malley gave back at the beginning of May. We're appreciative because what this is showing is just perfect timing, I think. A group of us started to meet back in the fall, started to sort of gain momentum after the beginning of the year, which is really when the Board of Selectmen stood up and made a commitment to forming a youth task force. So the work that we've been doing over the past several months has been in support of that and in response to that, and that's what we're planning to talk about today. So we really want to thank you and welcome the new Board of Selectmen members. I'm going to try and be brief and flip through a lot of the slides. There's a lot of information, but since you've all seen it, I don't want to review all of it. I'm going to move forward and get to the meat of it. You've heard who we are. We're a group of citizens from across the town, members of organizations, parents, students, and we all came together to talk about a need for additional out-of-school time programming and space availability for teens, places for kids to be together and to make safe choices. As many of you know, one of our first action items was to put out a youth survey. We have members of our group who work in the social sciences and who work with youth, so we put together a survey to really get at what kids want to see. We put it in the form of sort of proposing to them if there were a teen center. That's not the only thing that we're thinking about for sure, but if that were to become a reality, what kinds of things would students want to see? It was an online survey that was distributed to all students at the Pierce Middle School and at the high school. We got about a 15.8% response rate. And to some that doesn't sound great, but we're learning that that's actually a pretty decent response rate for this type of survey. 309 students. The next slide shows us who answered the survey. We got mostly responses from our middle schoolers, mostly girls, mostly middle school students, and that's okay. What we now know is that we have to figure out other ways of reaching our high school students, our older students. We know especially boy athletes participate at much higher levels in drinking and drugging, so we need to figure out a way to get to those kids through their coaches, through their teachers, through other ways. So we're just taking this as a learning opportunity. The kinds of things we asked, we have pages and pages and pages of data, and I didn't want to bring that, but what we wanted to show is something that keeps coming up over and over and over again, including in a conversation that we had this afternoon with a group of middle schoolers at the library. Kids want space and they want time that is not programmed, that is not planned for them, where they can be with their friends. They want places like kitchen space, living room space. They want to have a game room or a movie room, that kind of comfortable, welcoming space where everybody belongs and where kids can figure out what to do on their own. And this is what they want to do. They want to relax. They want to meet new friends. They want to have fun. It's pretty simple. I think it kind of flies in the face of what a lot of us adults thought we were going to hear. We thought that we had to put together a whole lot of programming that was going to be really robust and all about enrichment. And kids are doing that anyway. That's how most of their time is spent. So what they want is a place to relax, a place that's not, where their time isn't totally programmed by adults. So we know there's a need, and we want to be realistic here. We know that this is a real need and it's something that needs to be addressed and is being addressed, but we know we have other needs in town. None of us is naive to think that we're going to find a few $1 million and build a teen center. In fact, that we may decide that that's not even the answer. But what we do know from looking at our master plan, from conversations we're having all around town, it's a real need, and it's a real need that needs to be taken into account with relation to some of our other needs in town, especially capital needs around fire stations, schools, and things like that. So our approach has been to be as collaborative as possible, to reach out across all groups in town, and make this a true public-private partnership to get to an answer. You know, we don't want to be remiss and not mention what we are doing. We know what a lot of our kids do, especially the older teens on the weekends. They're heading into the back of Cunningham Park, and this is a response to that. But we also want to make sure we're looking at what we do offer. And we offer some really great programming. We know what we've done in the past, what has worked, where some of the challenges have been. We have a strong Parks and Rec department, but if you look especially at the image on the right, it's a heavily sports-oriented program. We have the ages there. Most of the programs, while a lot do go up to 8th grade, there's a focus on sports. Not all of our teens play sports, and that's not the only thing that they want to be doing. So we really do drop off in what's being offered to our older teenagers. We have school-based programs. We have lots and lots of activities, 62 clubs at the high school, 20 sports. A lot of our teens do play sports. So we know that those older kids are usually busy after school for several hours. What they don't have is a place to go on Fridays and Saturday nights, and that's when we're seeing, a lot of drinking, a lot of risky behaviors exhibiting. So, and then our community-based programming. We just came from a meeting this afternoon at the library. We have an unbelievable resource in our teen librarian. Her name is Magda. The kids, I lost count of how many times they broke into spontaneous applause about the work that Magda does with them on their own, unsolicited. It was really cool. This is a group of middle school students who get together, I think it's once a month, for a teen advisory board. They plan all their own programming and they run their programming. And we met with them and we just went through the series of questions, a lot of the questions that were on the survey, and got all this consistent feedback about space, about wanting a place to belong, where they feel that they belong, wanting a place to feel safe, a place that if they need to leave home for some reason that they can go in, they can drop in, they can be inside for a time, they can have outdoor space that's not the gazebo, which may not be the most appropriate spot for 11 and 12-year-olds to be running around. So that's happening, and it's being done really well. But we know that the library doesn't have the capacity to serve all of our kids. We have places like the Milton Arts Center, which has dramatically increased their teen programming. They've had some really successful programs with some short-term grant money this spring and going into the fall. And there are other nonprofits in town and other groups who are willing and able to participate in this. So this brings me to the task force. And what we've, as a group, really tried to focus on is how Milton Youth Advocates can be supportive of a task force formed by the Board of Selectmen. First and foremost, we have an ask of you that there be a real effort around diversity and inclusion. We feel strongly that as Milton is a diverse town, the task force should reflect that. And first and foremost, that the youth voice be on this task force from day one. Some of those assumptions that we made show us that we probably would have made some really big mistakes in the beginning of a process if we hadn't gotten kids in the room. And so we want to make sure that they have a real meaningful seat on a task force where decisions that are being made about them are being made by them as well and influenced by them. The next 3 slides are, kind of a brainstorm session that Milton Youth Advocates went through. We were thinking about just who the stakeholders are. It's a long list. If we forgot anybody, please let us know. But the idea here and then here is to think about who those stakeholders are, the kind of work in this slide, the kind of questions that need to be answered, the kind of work that needs to be done by a task force, and who can help, who can play the various roles there. So, we're not trying to be prescriptive and say that it needs to have this person, this person, this person, this from this department or this group, but thinking about how we can achieve a good end result that takes into account all these things. So what we thought about was grouping folks together in roles and areas of expertise rather than just job title or something like that. So again, just some suggested approaches to forming the task force. And really, just closing up my part, I just want to reiterate that the reason we're here, which is to support this work. Milton Youth Advocates has the time. We have some energy. We have some really great expertise in terms of the folks who have stepped up, wanting to volunteer, wanting to have an input in this kind of work for our town. And so we can ease the burden of some of the work that is sure to come. We can do things like run focus groups and town hall sessions. We know that we have a connection through the schools to get right to our youth. So we're offering, some recommendations that we've thought of, but really more than anything, our willingness and our hope that we'll be a part of this process and be able to support the work that you all started. So I'm going to pass this over to Margaret.
Thank you,
Hi,
Sarah.
everyone. Margaret Carroll's 19 Gibbons Street. So I started this process with Sarah and many others, and as we were going through and talking to people, it became clear that there are some short-term needs and some low-hanging fruit that we can really take care of sooner rather than later. First of all, the library needs some relief. The 30 to 50 middle school kids that go there after school, Monday through Friday, they are doing a fantastic job with them, but it's just not sustainable. The library is wonderful and very welcoming to these kids, and it's a great place to study, to socialize quietly, to read, to do homework. But a lot of these kids have been sitting all day. They want to be a little more active, a little loud, and they want to eat food. And that the library might not be the best place for that. So we've been talking to a lot of people about coming up with an alternative space. The library will always be welcoming to this group, but can we find some other place in town by next fall that some of these kids can go to that kind of operates in the same way and has some of the same values that the library is doing, but it's just someplace else. So we're working with that, on that. The other thing that we've found out is that there are a lot of offerings in town for teens, but let's have a centralized calendar. Let's have something where the Milton Arts Center and other places that are doing things already, where everything can be together, whether that's through Parks and Rec or something else. It'd be great to have all that information in one place for teens and parents. The third thing is we talked with Dave Perdios and Paul D'Amano at Parks and Rec about making some spaces around town more youth-friendly. And this is really in line with what the master plan found. Let's have some picnic tables and benches. We talked to Parks and Rec about their plan to, they're going to remodel or redo the basketball courts on Guile Road, and they're adding bleachers. And we talked to them about maybe adding a shade feature, so it's more useful for kids in the summer, where it can get really hot there. And they were really open to that idea. We would also like to maybe see if some of the other organizations in and around town can be pushed to make some changes that would encourage more youth participation. Like, we need rental skates at Ullin Rink, Could there be a teen swim at Cunningham or Egan? Could there be bowling again at Cunningham Hall for youth? So we're looking at some of those options. And then finally, a piece that I'm really working on is the youth engagement. And I've been talking to the schools, Pierce and the high school, about how we can have some meaningful engagement of teens in this process. We can't just invite them to 7 o'clock meetings. It's not going to work. But can we go to the school on a regular basis? Can we have a table in the cafeterias with whiteboards saying, what are your answers to these questions? What do you want to see in a teen center? How would you set it up? Can we have a club at each of those schools and get some input? Can we really develop some leaders who will come to a 7 o'clock meeting or who will present at town meeting? I think those are great options. We have identified some staff members at the middle school and the high school who we hope will help with this. So we're continuing to work on that. And finally, we know that most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the work of the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. And our work really kind of springs from the work that they have done. And we had a great conversation with Reverend John Allen at the Congregational Church, and he said it perfectly when he said, we want to provide the social aspect of the Crater without the risky behavior. And that's really what we're trying to do, and I think we're all on the same page with that. So thank you for your attention. I'm going to turn it over to Isabel right now.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight and for listening to me speak.
Just sit a little bit closer to your microphone.
Okay.
You're on television.
Oh my.
Not CNN, but you're on television.
Television is television. My name is Isabel Caridad Smith. I'm a junior at Milton High School, and I'm a Milton youth advocate. Milton's strongest attribute is its education system. We pride ourselves on excellence in education, and our students work the hardest to ensure that they exceed Milton standards. Consequently, I believe that our youth deserve to be recognized for their hard work. Milton students have worked so hard to achieve academic excellence, it's time to give them the opportunity to experience joy as well. It's imperative that Milton students know how valued they are by their community, how proud of them Milton is, how Milton supports them despite their challenges. I think everybody here knows that Milton doesn't have a lot of activity, and that's especially true for kids and teens. And that's why the Woods happen. Milton Public Library has become the only public space where Milton youth can spend time together that's not at school or at home without having to spend money. This places incredible strain on an institution designed to be a center of information sharing and of quiet social gatherings, not a hangout space for loud middle and high school students. We need a youth center in Milton. We need young people of Milton to know that one day they will be the people who lead, grow, and change our society, and that we care about that. Milton has an issue with mental health, addiction, drugs, and alcohol. How could this change if there was a space for youth to go that wasn't the Woods? The MHS SAD Club, Students Against Destructive Decisions, has advocated for a youth center for years, but has been unable to get this far. Tonight, I hope that not only have we made it this far, but that we'll continue to go farther. I'm borrowing this from another organization, but it's quite expressive. Nothing about us without us. Milton Youth Advocates represents the need to create space for youth activity, space, and leadership in Milton. And we hope that our presentation tonight has convinced you to support the creation of a youth center in Milton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can take any questions.
No,
No? All right, thank you.
thank you. So I just want to follow up. As you know, Michael and I have met with you. Margaret, you and I have met. I believe other members of the board have met as well. So obviously, we have two major concerns, and what I expressed both of these. One is clearly the short term, to try to have something in place by the time school comes back. You know, we're not going to be able to build a teen center by September. But the other thing that we see here is there are a lot of entities that want to step forward in this, and I articulated that too when we met. And so I think probably what we'll do next is call this town hall type meeting together and bring, it may not be a town hall, but bring all the partners, everyone who wants to be a part in this. And as I said to you, and I've said, Michael's heard me say this many times, bring your calendar, bring your toolbox, bring what you have. Let's identify what we have for needs, what we have available. There's a lot of, I've said this many times, and as the parent of an 8th grader, there are so many, just as there are hills and valleys, there are so many entities of people here. Apathy never lives in Milton. People always, just as you have tonight, who will take an active role in this. And I think once we bring all those heads together, we'll be able to, you know, get a lot of momentum going forward. And I thank you. And as I said to you when we met, I think you'll be a key piece of this. And so, don't go anywhere. All right? Anybody, anyone on the board have any questions? Anyone?
I have a question. Isabel, I'm just curious, what year in high school are you?
I'm a junior.
Great. And one other question I had, Sarah, in your presentation, you mentioned that you made a couple of assumptions as an adult as to what we think, perhaps. Could you share those with us?
Is this one on? This is on. So it was mostly around programming versus space.
Okay.
So I think as parents, we all, you know, we're sort of in this mindset of what are our kids going to be doing in different chunks of time. That's kind of the way we parent these days, it feels. And so I think when we first sat down in a room, and we had a lot of students in the room, and it was actually Isabel who said, you know what, hold on a second. You guys are talking programming. And you know, as she put it, kids are smart. They know what to do with their time. They know what they want to do with their time, but they need a space to do it that's not school, and that's not home. And so that was the assumption. Our assumption was we have to come up with a schedule of options for kids to participate in. And what we're seeing in the data from the survey, and what we're seeing in conversations with other professionals, especially social workers, Reverend John Allen at the Congregational Church, we were speaking with him about exactly this, that we know that kids, and the kids in Milton are no different than the national statistics. I don't know exactly where we fall, but we have all this data that shows kids are overscheduled and they're stressed.
Sure.
They have, the rates of anxiety and depression are really high. They're higher than they've ever been, substance abuse. And so it's to take away that feeling of being stressed and to have a place where they can be themselves.
Great, thank you.
Am I able to just respond, if I can
Sure,
respond to that?
sure.
What, I would offer to you all as you plan, if it's a town hall forum or whatever the forum is, if there's a way that our group can help to organize that, to bring people in, to help, actually facilitate in some way groups and things like that, we're happy to do that as well.
I know that.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for everything.
Thank
All
you.
of you. Thank you.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mike.
just-
Don't leave yet.
Just one quick thing, Sarah. Just focusing for a minute on the mechanics.
Yep.
If we're going to put a committee together, we're going to have a charge for the committee,
Right.
whatever the focus is going to be. So you might want to make some suggestions along those lines. We could take your mission statement, but you might want to think about what your suggestion for charge would be. And you can send that in. You don't have to.
Yeah,
I've
you don't have to
already
do
got
it
that's,
now.
I have that in the questions, the task force questions toward the back, slide 21.
Okay.
Is kind of, and again, I was thinking about this, what is this, how does this fit into all of this? This could be a way of organizing subcommittees that take, you all have done this a million times, I know, but just from another perspective, if we sort of worked backwards from a list of questions, what's the goal of this group? And then who are the right people? What we talked about last week was as I said, Milton Youth Advocates has a real concern around this process being fully inclusive, that it represent the diversity of Milton, and that it be youth-centric. And in order to do that, we have to be deliberate and intentional about reaching out to the right people. And that's not always and exclusively department heads and sort of the people we think of. Those aren't the only people that know our youth. They know them really well, our teachers and our administrators and the folks at the library, and they do know them, but we have other experts in Milton that just bring so much knowledge around this kind of thing. So that's what I was thinking, was that looking at this list of questions, and in some cases more the kind of person we need to help address this, rather than, I have this person in mind, and then going out and finding that person.
And then along those same lines, when you think about membership, you don't necessarily, I think, need 50 members, right? You have a lot of
Yeah.
stakeholders, a lot of constituent groups, but you may have 50 people contributing.
Right.
But you may only have 7 or 10 voting members who are going to vote and actually
Yep.
drive this thing forward and drive it through the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
So I would think about, the way my mind works is, okay, voting members and then contributing members.
Right.
Right, so those are
For
just
sure.
two thoughts. If we can get input on that, I think that'll be helpful.
We had that discussion.
Oh,
We
great.
had that discussion. Basically, and you and I had that discussion, so we did talk about that, so.
Well, and just following up on Mike's point, so we have to think about what our next steps would be as a board, because
Right.
one of the things that we've talked about was, at our last meeting, was all the different committees we're looking at forming and who might serve on some of the committees, and I think we had deferred the follow-up conversation to the June 2nd board retreat, if I'm not mistaken, so that's something we're gonna be talking about on Saturday, some of our other committee structures. So I think we kind of need that discussion maybe to drive the next steps as well.
Do you all foresee being able to put out a timeline of what that looks like for in this case, a new committee being formed?
We're talking about so many right now.
I know,
think that's
I
the
know.
challenge right now.
My own thought is, I think we need to at least start with an exploratory of this to get it started. I think we do, September's gonna be here before you know it.
Yep.
We have heard from the Arts Center, from Reverend Allen, from interested parents, had discussions with Park and Rec. I think the most important thing is to get at least on the town side, get all our players in the room.
Yep.
And then everyone else who's interested, and at least start to have a plan for September, just to take the pressure off the library.
Right. And Melinda asked a question earlier by email and pointed out sort of a confusion in the way I had worded things in the order of a couple slides. Was I suggesting that Milton Youth Advocates continue to focus on the short-term planning while a task force looks at some of the longer range issues? I wasn't necessarily suggesting that, but I actually think that there's some merit to that. If that helps to lighten the load in the short term, more than anything, the coordination of that information, as Margaret pointed out, there's been a lot of conversation with Parks and Rec already, both through the commissioners and Dave Perdios and Paul D'Amano, who are, it's ongoing. They've been, responsive to every request and every question, and come to the commissioners have come to our meetings and are part of the group. So there is an ability for us to continue to focus on that short-term stuff, because it's a lot of sort of details. That's just one way of thinking about it, and then.
Not that we won't need your help.
Right, right. As I say, it's more for the coordination of the sort of to triage all that information and get it to the right places so that it doesn't overwhelm what's a big process, for sure.
So we'll talk about it more on Saturday, and then by next week and as I said to you, just maintain your communication with us, because we're going to, we're gonna be 4th of July tomorrow.
Yeah,
It'll be Labor Day the day after that.
yep,
And the kids who aren't out of school yet are going to be going back to school before we even know it.
Yep.
So I think the immediate task before us is to work on filling the void, identifying, the partners and who can play right away, who can be involved in this right away, and being ready to go with something in September that's meaningful,
Yep.
and then the long term, as you know, just the idea of building a TEAS center is gonna be a big project. But that doesn't take away from the need that exists as you sit here tonight.
Right.
So I think just coming from the world where fires happen every day and you have to be able to deal with them, I think we understand what the situation is in that aspect of it. I think we need to attack right away and be able to deal with it.
Yep.
So,
Can I also
and
just
I
ask?
think you get that as well. Good.
I just want to ask the town administrators, I know it was the prior board, it was before the election when
It was.
we
You're
had
right.
the library come in and ask us for a
Right.
youth task force, and your group, Sarah,
We're
was getting formed around the
piggybacking.
same time.
Exactly.
So there were some parallel things happening, but I think the way we left it, I could be wrong, but I think we had asked that the town administrator and the library director and possibly some other department heads maybe start thinking about who might serve on a youth task force and what some of the next steps might be. And I don't know whether, since this kind of came up, your effort kind of came up very shortly thereafter, that may have impacted where those discussions went. But I'm just wondering if there's anything that the town administrator can report on that,
So
any
we,
discussions that have been happening.
Sarah will be presenting to the department heads on June 11th,
Okay.
at which point the subject matter experts from each of the department heads will be in the room, whether it's Mr. Potts, who's an SRO up at the school, or, Paul D'Amano or Bonnie DeVore, who programs some of the recreation programs in town. So that, I intend for that to be very productive, both from listening to what this group has to say and shaping the direction of that committee so that we don't have that person on it, but the right person on it, so,
That's great, thank you.
yeah.
You're right, Katie, in that we have to offer up our experts. We have to make them not just available, but a key part of this. Because we do have departments that have an integral ownership in all of our youth here. No, and I don't mean just the schools, I mean, like Park and Rec, the SROs, so all of them, they just do, so. And I think we need to grasp that momentum from their aspect as well, and Michael's done a good job with that, so I think everyone here realizes that.
Yeah, we sort of knew that walking in. We thought, we're preaching to the choir in the interest of everybody having the same information, wanted to make sure we got it to you and the public, but, really it was to just reinforce it, to reinforce it and to offer our support and our willingness to collaborate and to express that exists throughout the community. That's the really cool part about this, right, is that these conversations were sort of percolating under the surface and all just started happening at the same time. And I think that's the really exciting thing, is that there's a lot of momentum here that we don't even know about yet.
I told you this last week. I spent a morning last week with 200 eighth graders in groups of 50 at a time. And I made this part of my time with them. Just asked them, and they were very forthright. I knew a lot of them, fortunately, but they're very forthright and open and told me, you know, what they, some of them though, when I talked about the possibility of more than one place, they didn't like that. They want to all be in one place.
Yep.
So, I understand, we have heard, but I do really think that we can, there are a lot of assets in this community that we can use, that we can draw from for this. And we, hopefully, from our point of view, we'll help direct that with you. So, thank you all
Great.
again, and
Thank you. Thanks for
we'll be in
coming.
touch shortly. Don't be afraid to call. Okay, number 6, we have a conference entitled AARP Age-Friendly Community Initiative with Kara Cohen and Mike Festa from the AARP to discuss the process of Milton joining the Age-Friendly Community Initiative. Welcome. Come on up.
This looks like the seat, but I need another. What's your pleasure? Why, are you gonna ask for one?
I'll give another, yeah. I'll put 'em in. If they want to get up here.
Yeah.
I'll make the mics.
Why
What do you think?
don't you take the podium, the two of you, and you can both speak from there.
That'd be better.
Do you have a presentation that you're gonna, do you need to put up a presentation?
Well, I'll give you kind of an overview.
Okay.
It won't be anything formal.
Okay.
No, PowerPoints or anything like that.
We're feeling our way along in this new meeting room as we go, so.
Yeah, well, I can say from the back, the cheap seats, that the acoustics are just fine. Thank you for that.
How much were those seats?
Well, you'd probably know that better than I. The nice lady that's passing things around is Sandy Albright, just to sort of level set. Sandy is actually a Milton resident, you may or may not know, and she is the state president of AARP. It's a volunteer position. My name is Mike Festa. I'm the state director for AARP. And I wanted to come out, personally, frankly, because I am very excited about partnering with Sandy always, especially in the setting of Milton. And I want to just plunge right in and tell you that my sense of why I'm here, and Sandy are here, is to give you an overview of what the age-friendly movement is about. There's a lot happening. I understand there's been a pre-meeting, so you have some sense of it from Mike as the manager. So here's the situation. World Health Organization, probably about 6 years ago now, came up with a concept called the age-friendly community. And it was a very thoughtful analysis about what makes a quality community for people as they age. Not just for the old, and I put it in the context of the last agenda item. This is about aging from any age and really living in Milton in the long run, and what's involved in that. And so the World Health Organization created these 8 domains to analyze what a community looks like, the impacts on transportation, on housing, on civic participation, health, access, et cetera. And those 8 domains are a way, as I say, to frame what a community is doing and what it could be doing to be more age-friendly as it does policy, as it makes decisions around allocating resources, et cetera. AARP, right around that time, partnered with World Health, and we've now been in the business of promoting the age-friendly movement across the country. I'm very happy to tell you that in Massachusetts, we're actually one of the few states that has really propelled into what I consider to be an extraordinary series of happenings. For example, most recently, Governor Baker, which is only the second state in the country, decided to join the initiative as a state government and to make a sincere effort to consider the approach of what we talk about with age-friendly is applying a lens in policy making, which really looks at each and every decision around assets and around conditions in the Commonwealth, in this case, and decide where there may be priorities of focus, where there can be improvements made, where there are thoughtful approaches to the expenditure of monies. And I'll give you, so I just want to make that point, that the state is now part of the initiative. We have a number of communities around the state that are part of it. Marty Walsh actually was the first committed to the city of Boston. They're well into that second phase. And so I want to tell you what the implications are. If Milton decides that you want to be part of the age-friendly network, what it means is that AARP would be asked through the town officials to join the network, which would then generate a series of commitments and actions. And it's a 5-year commitment. It starts with understanding that when you do make policy, it's always best to assess what the neighbors want, what the conditions on the ground are, what really, as opposed to, I would say anecdotally for myself, as an ARP state director, been in this business a long time, not just in this role, but appreciating that as much as I'm a policy, wonk around this stuff, it's amazing what I personally don't know, and certainly what neighbors can tell you about how they see living in Milton, aging in Milton, what are the conditions on the ground, what are the implications for them, and how the town can be better at addressing some of those needs. And I will use Boston as a good example. I went and listened to many of those hearings, listening sessions, which is the first phase of assessing what the needs are. And, you could be in South Boston, you could be in the North End, everybody was pretty much saying the same thing. Aside from affordable housing, which is an overarching challenge for everyone in Massachusetts for sure, it was lack of information. Not knowing what was happening in the community in terms of accessing resources and entitlements and essentially the kinds of things that connect you to community. And that was a big surprise to me. And so I would tell you that in deciding to go forward, what the commitment is to acknowledge that in your master plan and in how you approach your government and policies, there's no doubt that you've given a lot of thought to how you can address issues like transportation, affordable housing, et cetera. But when you apply an age-friendly lens, you really are in a place where you're going to, if you're part of the network, get some really strong resource from ARP. We are a network that exchanges a lot of information. We are also actively supporting mini grants and coordinating with both Elder Affairs, the Mass Councils on Aging, the Tufts Health Plan Foundation. These are major funders that assist in on-the-ground actions. For example, resources for guiding the survey process. And then you get to the next phase, which is really the part that matters, I think, to most, which is the action plan that is generated from these listenings and an appreciation for what the unique challenges and opportunities are for Milton. And so I would tell you that that second phase is one, again, where ARP is hand in hand with you, with experts that we have in several of these policy areas. And a lot of this can be done online, a lot of this can be done through peer-to-peer supports. There are a number of mayors and town officials across the Commonwealth who are really immersed in this now. This is about the 3rd year. Boston started in 14, so it's actually into the 4th year. But as recently as just a couple months ago, Quincy, for example, joined. I know it's a different environment, but suffice to say it is in the neighborhood. New Bedford's big into age-friendly. The Berkshires as a county. There's a whole group of Metro West towns that are doing this. And so I want to just conclude as the overview to tell you that what we want to be sure is that you're familiar with what the age-friendly network looks like, what the assets are that we could apply to support your effort in joining and engaging in an age-friendly process. And then I think, the conclusory point would be this. I am sure that in all of the work you do, you think about all your constituencies, and particularly seniors. There are challenges that are somewhat unique to seniors. But at the same time, sometimes when we do our work, there may be a lack of appreciation for the hyper-focused impacts as people are aging in place. And in order to age in place, for example, you think about a domain area such as transportation. Now, we know that people are struggling with transportation needs, but the idea of coming up with creative ways of addressing some aspects of transportation that may be different, that may not have been thought of, that might be applied and being very successful in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, where is part of our network of information sharing, could very well be something that you can tap into. So there's a lot of opportunity. I want to assure you that, at least in our judgment, for the experiences we've had so far in the last 3.5 years, the best way to start this process is to have a comfort level for those electeds and those in government to say, you know, this makes sense. We ought to continue to move down that path. The next thing, which I think, frankly, and what I want to end with, is I think the next most critical piece is engaging volunteers in the community, activists, if you will, who see this as a value and do the kind of work. And again, it's really analogous to what I just heard in the room about the movement around dealing with youth access to services and opportunities, et cetera. It really has to be driven by volunteers. And so we are very much involved in that as well at ARP. We have a lot of volunteers in different ways of engaging them, and we certainly would be encouraging you to take a next step of convening or encouraging the convening of volunteers and interested parties to come up with a next presentation, frankly, to the Board of Selectmen to say, we're ready now to ask you if you would submit a letter requesting that you join the ARP Age-Friendly Network. And then from there, there's a lot that can happen. Now, I've taken probably, frankly, too much time from my buddy, but Sandy's brought a lot of material, obviously to be left, but she has some points that I have not addressed. So thank you for your
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
I am a Milton resident
Good
for
evening.
about 15 years, and also ARP's advocacy director is for Massachusetts is Jess Costantino, who many of you know from East Boston.
East Milton.
That's where I live, East Milton. Just follow the airplanes, you can come right to my house.
Jess is the moderator, was the moderator of the East Milton Neighborhood
Association.
Association,
Yeah,
yes.
right. So I've worked for 3.5 years as a volunteer with the Boston Age Friendly, so I'm very excited to kind of come back to the hometown and see what we can do. And I was giving a fraud watch program at with a bunch of seniors at Fuller Village a couple months ago, and actually started to talk to them about Age Friendly a little bit. Had a conversation that Deb Felton helped arrange with Cheryl Tugas. I don't know how many more studies we have to do. It's terrific. I read it, actually. So there's so much in there that we can really work on. We have about 2,000 ARP members in Milton. So what we try to do in Boston is not always, we're all the likely suspects, and try to get the likely suspects, especially since so much is going on in the town. I mean, there are just so many committees and so many things happening. So we would really like to reach out, not just to seniors, but through the ARP, through Fuller Village, through any other age group, and working with Cheryl and initially to see what we can really do to see what's already happening and how we can enhance the things that we're really talking about. It can be, I left a couple of books and I gave some to Mike before, but just the examples of what towns do. You know, their grandparents raising grandchildren, certainly in Milton, who sometimes it's hard for them to access the schools. I'm on Grandparents Raising Grandchildren's Commission. Some things that should be easy to get done that aren't always getting done. And that's kind of the idea, getting volunteers to do that. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not talking about creating a lot of money projects. And as Mike said, I worked in Boston for 45 years in human services. I would have bet money that housing and transportation were the top things that people wanted to talk about. And it really was communication. And there are some things starting, blogs and in different places, people all have each other's cell phone. How can you find out what's happening? And even after 15 years, I don't really always know what's happening. And I don't go on the computer every day to find that out either. So I think there are lots of things that we can really do together. So I think what we're asking tonight is kind of permission from you that we can kind of go ahead. I'm happy to begin the volunteer work and then hopefully find lots of volunteers who want to spend a lot of time on this. And then come back maybe in the fall. I know some of you are new, and there are about 20 committees I know meeting. Maybe come back fall, late fall, and give you the full Monty, the full understanding of what age-friendly is, and have some of those unlikely suspects with us. So are there any questions?
Any questions? Anyone?
Can I just for the 4 pages that I gave you, this is just part of the presentation, but I always have to show this. So the 2 parts of the map that we really have to think about is the first page shows the number of seniors living in Massachusetts towns in the year 2010. They're in red. Here's 2020, and 2030.
Yeah.
So, we really need to make sure we're getting the strength from the seniors, like myself, and other folks, to really be able to be part of the town in a very significant way to help during that. The other, Mike kept talking about the 8 domains. These are the kinds of areas that we would be working in. And then the cycle that Mike talked about of this, the 5-year plan. And I just wanted to kind of give you an idea, so if folks talk to you through the summer, that you have a sense, and then we'll come back anytime and talk in detail.
Go ahead. Question?
I just wanted to ask, so I have, the next step is kind of a grassroots, volunteers, interested parties get together, and then you come back to us in the
Yes.
fall and request that we ask to join the AARP effort. Is that the?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, we want to make, we'll kind of test the waters, and make sure that there are enough folks that we're just not adding it to everybody's work, and that and talking to people about what kind of significant impact can we make, and then come back and say, we think we're ready, and would this group be willing to support it? You can't do it without the support of the folks sitting in this room, really.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any other questions? So you let us know when you're ready, and you can just reach out to Michael, and
Absolutely, yep.
we'll be glad to have you come back.
Good. We appreciate the time. I think it'll be fun, and we're happy to be able to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good summer.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. The next item, 7, is discussion approval regional bike sharing MOU. This is going to be a motion to approve a memorandum, but I'll open up if anyone wants to discuss. We've had both Lime Bike and, was UFO here on the old, was that the old board, Katie? Was that just the 3 of us when UFO came in?
OFO was
OFO
here,
was
but they're
here.
not part of this
So this is our- this is-
MAPC MOU.
So this is part of the MAPC MOU that was discussed and presented to us before.
Yeah.
Michael, you want to, any comments?
Sure, no, we've talked about this briefly with this board. We had a presentation, Lee Toma, who's the chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee and is one of the residents on the Traffic Commission, presented with the gentleman from Lime Bike. There's 13 communities in this MAPC MOU. It's a regional bike share program. This is a bike share program that does not have a hubway-type docking system. It works on an app on your phone. It helps you locate these bicycles, which can be dropped off at your desired location. When the presentation was put forth to the previous board, it talked about the advantage of doing that. If you take a hubway ride downtown, and I only know that because I worked on the streets of Boston, but you have to drop it off at the docking location and then proceed to your end destination. I think the advantage that Lime Bike had spoken about, and OFO when they were in earlier, was the fact that you could take this mode of transportation to your end destination.
Right.
So it's a pilot program that they're trying in some communities in Greater Boston. Some have accepted it already, and there was some information passed around about Malden and the number of riders. And when we spoke, I believe it was back in February, we talked about some specific locations in our town where it might be advantageous for these bikes to appear, whether it's down Central Ave, down by the bike trail, which kept people to and from public transportation, which gets people to the red line sometimes, which gets them in town and takes vehicles off the roadway, or even a place like East Milton Square where people commute with bicycles a lot with the infrastructure that's been put in place, or even somewhere like a Curry College where a lot of the students up there don't have vehicles on campus and are just looking to get to the Stop and Shop on the Nafonsa Valley Parkway or wherever their destination might be. So Town Council has taken a look at it, disseminated the comments. That's basically it in a nutshell. It would be a pilot program. I know, Mike, you had a comment earlier about whether we're locked in for 5 years on this. It's a 1-year contract that gets re-upped in each of the remaining 4 years. But we do have Lee Toma here. I did see Lee Toma. Lee, if you want to extrapolate on any of this, or if
Thank you. I didn't really have much more to add. I think you covered the bases pretty clearly there. We believe on the Bike Committee that this is a great opportunity for a public-private partnership for the town that doesn't cost the town much of anything. And it's a great opportunity. So a lot of my neighbors, they try to drive to Milton Station and can't find a parking space. This way they can save money and do it in a healthy, environmentally sustainable manner. So we believe it's a good opportunity for the town. And as you saw from the MOU, there's the opportunity to opt out if the town feels that it needs to. So we'd like to see the town move forward with this and ask for you to consider that. Thank you.
If you could just refresh my memory, Lee, and thank you about the cost thing. There is no cost to the town. If I had the app loaded on my phone and I found a bike right outside of the Council on Aging tonight, what would it cost me?
I believe the rates are $1 for a half-hour usage. So an additional half hour if you were taking it for a recreational ride would
So you
add
can
on
get
to
home
that.
now. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. And I saw, just while you're here, I don't know if it was you who posted it. Someone posted this weekend on the number of bikes. Was it across the New Bridge or just used, did you see that this weekend? Someone posted the number of bikes that used the bike path between Central Avenue and Mattapan Station on, it was an incredible number. It was more than they used the trolleys this weekend, so. We know you were waiting for this, so if there's no further discussion,
Well, there
go
is.
ahead, Kate, go ahead.
I've got some
Go ahead.
comments. So we all got town council's memo that he doesn't see any legal problems with the MOU, but he is pointing out that we need to make sure the town's listed as an additional insured, and we get sufficient liability coverage, which would get covered through the individual contract. But there's some things in the MOU that we haven't really talked about. I think, and it may have been at the prior board, we talked maybe that the planning staff might be appropriate, although I'm reading this again, I'm thinking maybe the traffic commission or the public safety departments might be the ones who might also want to weigh in. Because we have to decide how many bikes we'd want to allow in the town, how many bikes we might seek. We're also looking at potentially adopting some local rules and/or fees. And we need to have a point of contact person, which looks like they're actually contemplating 2 levels of contact. They're looking for someone who can go to their quarterly meetings and be kind of the point of contact, and then a higher-up individual who might be at a special meeting that they might convene. So, you know, we haven't really addressed some of those issues, and so I'm fine with us entering into this MOU and approving it tonight. I just think we either need to have some follow-up discussion, or maybe we come up with some guidance on that tonight.
So, in the short term, in the more the operational, other than the higher up, are we thinking a town employee, or thinking maybe someone from the bike committee to be like the go-to between?
I think we had talked about the town administrator at a prior meeting, but I'm thinking the town administrator, it's just my reading of this, and others may have different views. It sounds like the town administrator might be the higher up one who's not having to go
Right.
to the quarterly meetings. Maybe it's somebody who reports to the town administrator who's going, or covering the quarterly meetings, and the town administrator's there really if there's a bigger picture issue here.
Yeah, there was a late response today from MAPC. What they've found from some of the municipalities, that it's someone from the planning department. I was thinking possibly Lauren Mazier. That could be
I
the
think that
point
would make
person
sense.
for that. And then when we get the collective, you know, is this working? We're finding problems here and there, then I think there's a quarterly meeting of mayors and either elected officials or town government officials that can go and, you know, just call a timeout or whatever we have to do to make sure that this program is working and, you know, not only succeeding for the bicyclists, but everyone that's not using them. I think everyone saw the picture a couple of weeks ago with bikes riddled on a sidewalk, and I have full confidence in the gentleman that presented, Mr. Mullen, that night, that there is a system in place. This isn't the first municipality that will have this in place, and I think they're solving some of those problems. But to your point, Ms. Conlon, yeah, I believe that Lauren Messio from our planning department would be a good point person for that.
I agree with you. I think she'd be a great choice, and maybe then, if you're gonna task her with that, maybe, I mean, town council's also pointing out that we're going to wanna see these contract documents with the participating communities so that we can make sure we've got the insurance coverage issues addressed, and whether, you know, we may have some comments we wanna make on the individual contracts once the MOU's already in place and we're looking at an actual contract with somebody. So maybe the planning staff is the appropriate staff to ask to look at local rules that other communities have already entered into a contract, may have put in place and that we may want to look at to model what our local rules might be. And fees.
So just a follow-up to that, because it looks like Winthrop, Waltham, Watertown, Revere, Newton, Needham, and we would be the last one of the, how many of these do we know have already entered into this? Do we know?
Last I heard, there were 12 that had signed on.
That already signed. There was a pretty good story in the Globe 2 weeks ago about this.
Yeah, well, these are the towns that would be signing. So we'd be signing the MOU, but then this
Right.
contemplates a follow-up contract with the actual bike provider.
There would be additional contracts with the two vendors, and details would have to be worked out on those.
Okay.
Another suggestion from the Bike Committee, as mentioned, in some of the more crowded places like business districts, we suggest that working with the vendors to have parking restrictions are a function that are built into the system so that the bikes have to be left at a bike rack or a tree or something like that, so they're not just in the way
Leave it
of
on the sidewalk,
general
right.
users.
I think that was part of the concern that was brought up when they were here last time. That was a question we had. Anything further?
So,
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go first.
so my understanding from reading this, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear, is that the contracts are going to be with the MAPC, and that we are delegating this for the master contracts for the MAPC to sign with the vendors.
Yes.
And that those will be exclusive contracts, and I think the MAPC has a right to opt out, but I don't know that, and we can give input, but I don't know that we have the right, at least under the MOU, to opt out.
I think you're right, the MAPC is the party, but it says contract documents will be made available to participate in communities before they're finalized. And I thought that's what John's comment was, that we want to make sure we have input into it.
That's right.
To be able to give whatever comments we think are applicable in Milton.
Okay.
Mr. Flynn is here. Do you want me to ask him to comment on that? He is here, Katie.
No, I think we understand.
No,
Okay,
I
all right,
don't,
okay.
I think
Melinda?
his email was clear.
Yep.
Well, under number 4, the responsibility for day-to-day oversight of bike sharing operations shall fall to the participating communities. And I'm just wondering, do we have a plan for that, or we'll come up with that? Or is there sort of a roadmap that other communities could provide us with, how they've done this?
In talking with Mr. Mullen from Lime Bike, he says that they intend to take on the majority of that role, taking in feedback from the community, such as comments on bikes that need to be relocated, and handle that themselves. If it needs to be routed through a community website like our Report a Problem on our town website, then that could also be arranged too.
He did say that when he was here. That he did. We were out, because my concern was like, you're going to have an operational component within the town with bikes. Who's going to oversee that aspect of it? And they did respond to that, because I see that as a distinct possibility.
Right,
If I could add, MAPC went through a thorough vetting process.
Yes.
They looked at 9 different vendors and selected the ones that were most responsive to the communities and to their process. And they felt that these would be the ones that would serve the communities best. And I think that would work best for the community.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
Just could we schedule then for follow-up so that we have the planning staff or the town administrator, if you'd prefer, Mike, to report out, but whenever it's the right time, 3 months, 4 months,
Okay.
5 years, to give us a report on what the locations are that we've chosen and what is going on with the other towns, whether we've seen the contract, whether we've given comments, and any local rules issues we might want to talk about.
Do you know if any community is already operational of these ones that are listed with bikes?
Yes, Malden.
Malden, right?
They did a
Okay.
pilot program last year, and they were eager to get going again this year. So they're up and running, and I believe Chelsea may also be up and running too. And Quincy is using a different vendor, but they're
Right, I knew
launching
that.
this
I
week.
did know that. Okay. A motion? Do we want to?
I'll move that we approve a memorandum of understanding between the town of Milton and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for a regional bike share program, and to authorize the town administrator to sign any related documents.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Leith.
very much.
Thank you for coming and all of your hard work. Okay. Item number 8, we have a discussion with Attorney Mario McGetrick regarding Cypress Catering License. Good evening.
Thank you for having me tonight. The reason I'm here is that Cypress Catering, which is a DBA doing business as of Welch Restaurant Management, which also operates Abbey Park Restaurant at 550 Adams Street. Cypress Catering has applied for a state caterer's license to serve and to sell liquor at events. This has been available since 2012. It's new legislation. There aren't a huge number of licenses that have been applied for, and ABCC, to a certain extent, is still feeling its way as to the process and the requirements. But our application is in with ABCC, and they have checked off all the required documents, which can be a hurdle with this application process. They are coming out tomorrow to visit the restaurant and Cypress Catering. And the reason I'm here tonight is to ask the Board of Selectmen to approve the location for liquor storage for Cypress Catering. And the reason you would need to approve this is that it will be at the same address as a restaurant that has a liquor license. And ABCC wants to make sure that the premises remain separate in some way. So I've given you a plan with my letter that shows that the storage for Cypress Catering will be in the basement at 550 Adams Street. It will be in a secure, locked, basically a closet. It's not a huge area, and it doesn't need to be. And it will not be accessed in any way for restaurant operations. The restaurant stores its liquor at the bar, which is on the first floor. ABCC does not have a clear explanation of what vote they want from you. So I've written a proposed motion, and I actually revised it, and I'd like to give you a revised version of it, if you could pass that around, because I want to make absolutely sure that the vote says that once you approve this liquor storage, that this storage area will no longer be part of the liquor service premises for Abbey Park Restaurant. The idea is that a liquor license, as you know, because you've approved a number of them for restaurants in Milton, a liquor license permits the actual area where you can serve liquor. And I don't know what the original license application for Abbey Park said, because it was a number of years ago. I was on the Board of Selectmen. I don't recall, I certainly didn't represent them. But it may have provided a plan that just described the entire premises, the basement and the first floor, as the premises for the liquor license for the restaurant. If that's the case, then you need to distinguish this particular storage area from the restaurant premises. Both enterprises are run by the same organization, the same LLC, Welch Restaurant Management, and that's Vance Welch, and there are other members of that organization. So in a certain way, there's common management, but it's very important that the actual operation be separate. So my recommendation would be, if you're willing to approve the liquor storage as we've described it, would be to use the motion that I provided, which gives a little bit clearer language as to separating the liquor license for Abbey Park from this particular storage area. There isn't a lot that I can tell you about the caterer's license, other than the fact that any caterer who has a caterer's license in Massachusetts can apply for this type of liquor license, and if they get it, they can use it at private events, both in the town where they're located and also in other towns. And there are other restrictions, however. For example, the police, the head of the police and the Board of Selectmen are supposed to be notified 48 hours in advance of any event when a caterer's license is going to be used. So you would always know where and when in the town such a license was going to be used. And in fact, I expect that Mr. Welch would be giving you a lot more notice than that, because he generally plans his events at least 6 months in advance. So it's very unlikely it would be as late as 48 hours. But you would get notice, and you would know exactly where such events were taking place in case you wanted to exercise police control or something like that over it. The staff for the caterer has to be trained in exactly the same way that the staff for a restaurant has to be trained. They have to have tip certification, and I've already provided all the certification to ABCC for every employee who would serve for the caterer. They have evidence of that. They have a copy of the food service permit for Cypress Catering. In fact, I had the Board of Health reissue that permit because it was issued to Abbey Park Restaurant rather than Welch Restaurant Management, and it didn't distinguish between Cypress Catering and the restaurant. So it's now been issued separately, and Cypress Catering has its own food service permit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments? Questions? Michael?
Marion, is there a standard that we're applying in approving this liquor storage plan? Is there any standard that we're following and has to be, you know, is it just that it needs to be separate or excluded from the license? I'm just kind of trying to figure out what our parameters are.
Excluding from the license was my idea.
Okay.
Because I felt that was a very clear way to say that the restaurant would not be using this storage area. The restaurant has its own liquor license and certainly wouldn't be using it to store liquor.
Right.
There's no standard that's provided by ABCC. They want to separate, they would prefer that a caterer have a separate premises and a separate storage area. But it's not uncommon for a restaurant to also operate a catering business, so they will be, and they have had other instances where this is the case. And they have told me that they want a vote from the Board of Selectmen. So what I would say to you is that as a board, if you have some concerns or you have a particular separation that you want, that this is the time to tell us what you want us to do. And I'm not really trying to evade the question.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I've tried
I
to
understand.
address it in the language that I've
Yeah.
provided,
Yeah.
but perhaps you can think of something else that you would like included that also should be stated in that vote.
So here, the separation is it's going to be on a different floor and it's going to be in a locked room. That's
Yes.
the,
It's on a different floor for each liquor license.
okay.
I get that in that, as you know, when you were here last time, I did speak to this. This is an amenity under the statute within the Commonwealth that the ABC actually likes. This was first brought to me back when I was chief. The notification to both the police and the Board of Selectmen comes because on a one-day, that's part of the sign-off. So it's just kind of mirrors so that a community, both the public safety entity and the head of government, are still familiar with what's going on. But these are actually becoming very common within the Commonwealth, and the ABC has put a very good regulatory structure in place for the approval of them. So I'm actually comfortable with it. They actually prefer these somewhat even more than the one-days, because the caterers in this long-term with the one-days, very often, as we even see some of the applications that can come here, it's just, oh, I'm going to have this one event, so let's get a liquor license and have one for one day. And the caterer's license addresses so many of the entities that exist, not just under Chapter 138 in the code, but the civil aspects, all of that, all the entities that are required. So the tips training, all of that comes with that, and I like that on the caterer's license. Anyone else? So, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to open.
Go ahead.
Me? Oh, should there be a time frame for it, Marion? Or, I mean, should it be
Well, the way I worded the vote was as long as you can do it any way you want. Most of these, normally approvals and licenses are for a year, but the renewal time is at the end of November, I
Okay.
believe, for most of yours. So any way you want to word it, if you want to say that it has to be renewed at the end of November, that would be fine. I think I said as long as Cypress Catering has a liquor license in good standing from ABCC, and this is the storage plan, that you approve it. You might want to do something different than that, but that would mean that it would continue. We wouldn't have to come back in and renew the approval for the storage.
So to be coterminous with the license?
Right, the license has to be renewed.
Right.
It's like a restaurant license.
You are correct also on the storage. I mean, a lot of the entities that have this probably don't have the space to have separate storage, so I appreciate that you've included that. So we can't make this a motion tonight. Would you want us to schedule this tonight? Could we vote this tonight?
The one reason I'd like you to at least give me some feedback is that I'm meeting with ABCC tomorrow. So if the selectmen have feedback or comments, or if they want to take the vote, that would be good for me to know. I mean, if there's a problem with it, then it's also good for me to know that.
I'm comfortable with it myself personally. I just want a procedure. I know John's here. I don't know if we could we vote this tonight? Even though it's on for a discussion, it was not on for a motion or approval. Would it have to be posted for approval, I think, if we were going to vote it? Yeah, so perhaps go ahead, do you have a question?
I do now.
Go ahead.
I heard from you coterminous, and I heard from you that their license would have to be renewed. But does that mean our approval then needs to be?
Well, we approve all liquor licenses we renew them all
Right,
every
right. So
year.
I'm just making sure that they are coterminous.
This
Thank
isn't
you.
you're not approving a liquor license
Right, we're
tonight.
Right, I know that.
You're approving storage
Right.
for a liquor license that would be issued by the state agency, ABCC. So that's different from your restaurant liquor licenses.
Right.
But the question you had from your fellow member was, if you do such an approval, do you need to do it and say it's for 1 year and it needs to be renewed, or it needs to be renewed in November, the way other licenses,
Right, that's
even though this
the
isn't a
question.
license, have to be approved. I also don't know for sure if that's the renewal time for this license, since it would be issued hopefully in June 2018. So you might say coterminous with the ABCC license, we should come back and ask for approval of the liquor storage, if that's the way you would like to do it.
I think it only makes sense to do it that way, because that's the normal, otherwise you might get lost in the shuffle, and if you keep it in the same lane as everything else, then I think it just makes sense. Again, my only question is procedural. Can we approve something that's not on as a motion to approve tonight procedurally?
I think the answer is no.
I do too.
But in terms of, from my
Feedback.
perspective, just to Marion's looking for some feedback, I mean, I'm in favor of this if
I am as well.
we put the language in about it being coterminous with the caterer's license. I think it makes sense.
Right.
And maybe we just revise it, add that language, and vote it next time.
If you want to do that, and then we'll put it
Sure.
on for the very next meeting, is that all right with you?
It's fine. I don't know when ABC is going to approve this. I'm hoping and praying that it will be very soon. That's the only reason I thought, I think in my letter I provided a possible motion. I was trying to roll it all into one ball.
Right, I
but it's
have that, and
not
that's
been
my
posted
only,
that
my
way,
only
so-
question is looking at is how it's listed on the agenda.
Exactly.
It's just a discussion and not approval or motion. I just don't think.
Yeah.
So depending on what your ABCC schedule is, why don't we add it as an agenda item for Saturday for the board retreat, just at the very beginning? It sounds like it would be a short discussion, because we're
don't-
having the discussion tonight.
I don't think there's any, I think, I want to say this when we get into this later, I don't think there's anything that we'll be voting on Saturday. It's a retreat for discussion purposes only. I've looked at some guidelines that, it's actually a very common thing. I mean, we can, if you want, if you needed that fast,
I don't see why we couldn't vote it. I mean,
We
we're
could.
scheduling for a retreat, but this would be a 1-minute discussion at the beginning, potentially. If we're in agreement tonight, and I agree with Mike and others who have said that they're willing to approve the liquor storage plan, I am as well, but if we're talking about, if there's a timeline here, and if there isn't,
Do you need it by
let
Saturday?
us know. But Marion, it sounded like you've got some time sensitivity with the ABCC, and they need a vote from us before they can issue a
That's
license?
what I actually don't know. That's one of the things ABCC doesn't tell you. Is a chicken and egg, Do they want to know that you've approved this before they'll approve their license? That's a possibility. Or is it the other way around, and you can take this vote, and you could, contingent on the license being issued by ABCC? So I guess I would ask or suggest that if you're willing to do that on Saturday, if I provide a revised suggested motion, that the approval is coterminous with the annual renewal of the ABCC license, should it be issued. I mean, it's not going to mean anything anyway if the license isn't issued. So I could rewrite it and provide it to your office tomorrow. If you're willing to put that on the agenda for Saturday, that would be great. Meanwhile, at 11:30 tomorrow, we're meeting with ABCC. So if there's some change, dramatic change to what I'm asking for because of what ABCC says, I'll certainly tell you that it's not necessary to take the vote Saturday or whatever. I'll get an update. But I think they just, we just thought it would be helpful for them to get some feedback from you before they meet with us. and see what sort of language they're looking for, if they are looking, as you say, for a particular language. So you won't really, you'll get this after 11:30 tomorrow, because I want to meet with ABCC first to see what they're looking for.
And I'm sure you can certainly articulate, our comments tonight that we've
Yes.
made so far, and then we can do this going forward.
And for purposes of Saturday, could we notice it as a meeting of the Board of Selectmen just with this agenda item,
Okay.
Open the meeting, just this agenda item, close, and then
We can do that as
separate
well,
notice for the
absolutely, yeah.
retreat? That might be one
So
option.
if you can let us know tomorrow, because tomorrow's the post, right? We
I
have to
appreciate
post by
that.
tomorrow, so that'd be
Yeah,
great.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. I'm getting there. Okay, item 9, we have a discussion with Attorney Ned Cochran, who was requested to speak with us regarding a proposed project. As we know, there's been going on for, we've had several meetings in the past with Falcone companies regarding a project in the square, and a joint meeting with the planning board regarding this project is being discussed for Thursday, June 21st. We're just waiting to finalize that date. Am I correct? Everyone fine with that? Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm just getting used to this. Bear with me, please. Thank you.
Ned Corcoran, attorney here on behalf of the Falcone Companies. I'm joined at the table by Andrew Stebbins, who is a project architect from the architectural team, and Bob Falcone and his sister, Jean Falcone Schmidt, are also present. And we're here, as you know, we went through a fairly significant process through the fall and winter of this past year, culminated with a fairly large meeting at the East Congregational Church in early April, the outcome of which was really uncertain as to how we would move forward with the project as it had been developed to that point. And so we sort of taken the last 6 to 8 weeks to sit back, take a breather, and reconsider more broadly what the options for the project might look like, consider the things that we heard, think about how we could respond to what we heard, and move forward. And really start to think about the site in a different way, think about whether it was possible to reconfigure relative to, can we take down the existing office building and relocate those tenants? Previously, we hadn't thought that we could do that. Consider massing of the building, particularly relative to Bassett Street. The ground floor in the old building design was a garage. Was it possible to bring the retail and residential space down to the Bassett Street level by reconfiguring how we would park it? And so we've come up with a new concept for parking. We heard that there were concerns about whether or not there was adequacy of parking, and we've come up with think of plans to increase volumes of parking and perhaps make parking available for the square, and substantial increase over what we'd previously proposed. That would be beneficial to the town relative to the volume of parking that would be available. We made some modifications to, started to think about modifications to Adams Court itself. We plan now is to significantly widen that court. It's currently 10 feet. We were going to pull the building 4 feet off of Adams Court. We're now coming with 17, another 7 feet off of Adams Court, so it's almost double the width of Adams Court itself. And so thinking about those things and some other and other issues that we had thought of internally, Andrew and his team sort of went back to the drawing board and have at least started with some concepts and plan level that talks about some of the new ideas. We hope to be ready on June 21, if that's a joint meeting, to present renderings, 3D models, et cetera. They'll be much more specific to what the building might look like and might feel like, but we thought initially last Thursday with the planning board, tonight with this board, we could at least talk about the concepts from a plan perspective and at least get people thinking about that, and then we'll want to start thinking about a process where the town could lead us through to an outcome. I can talk about that after Andrew makes his presentation.
Good evening.
All right,
Thank you.
good evening.
Andrew.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. Good evening, everyone. So, as Ned had said, we rethought the site a bit, and we have the start of a new proposal that we wanted just to touch base on tonight, and thought the best way to describe the new proposal is to go back through the initial proposal, the elements of the proposal, and then I'll go through and show you the revised proposal. I sort of pulled back the previous proposal back to a diagrammatic plan form here, so these are sort of new exhibits people haven't seen, but the first 3 slides will be of the previous proposal. So here you see the previous proposal. We had the existing office being maintained, and we had this L-shaped new construction of wood construction over the parking, below grade parking. We're actually at grade at Bassett Street, but below grade of the surface parking here. So the surface parking area was a sort of entrance parking court. It was an access to the office use and the retail and the residential resident entry as well. So next 2 slides are going through each level. So as you may have been aware or familiar with, there's basically 2 levels. We'll call Bassett Street. We'll call that elevation 0, for lack of a better term, just for reference sake. And so the previous proposal, we had the at grade parking at Bassett Street. It became below grade as the grade extended up, and we actually had a couple of proposals. One had a garage access here, and I think the last one we had was another access point here. We had a pedestrian connection there as well. But, by and large, it was a wall of parking. I think we did the best we could to break down the mass and make hide the parking as much as practicable with facade treatment. However, there was discussion about the ground plane not being activated there, which was a fair comment. And then what we call 10 feet up, elevation 10, which is essentially at the existing office elevation and more or less what is on Adams Street. So this was the other active level, and so here's the entries that we had to access of the existing building. We had this through court here. We did have Adams Court pulled 4 feet off of the existing 10-foot right-of-way, so it was 14 feet wide, and the resident entry here. Colors are denoting the different uses. So we had the residential here, and then the office/retail on the other side. So that's basically how it worked. So when we took a step back and figure out, what could we do to the proposal to affect a meaningful change? So we went back to the owner and says, well, what happens if we were able to relocate your existing tenants and get rid of the existing building? So obviously that has a benefit. Well, the impact that has is that we have actually more area to deal with, to work with. But the other thing it really opened up was not having to sort of honor or access the existing front entries here. So that really unlocked quite a different approach to the project. So here's an overview of that approach. So basically, instead of having the parking below the grade and below the building, which is more expensive to build, we're proposing the parking to be next to the building. So what this shows here is a precast parking garage that is being wrapped by the wood structure. And the other thing you notice here is when you wrap the wood structure, we have these 2 legs projecting out and have a different approach to the courtyard. So let me go level by level, describe basically what's happening here. So here's back to elevation 0, the Bassett Street elevation. unlocked an opportunity here, have a lot more at-grade interaction. We have a retail office here, which is adjacent to the other retail next to it, and then we have an opportunity for residential and a residential courtyard. And the other obvious benefit here is instead of having the previous proposal where we had the wall of building, we actually have two projections out here. And, you know, we're working on the design, but we're, you know, thinking of how we can actually further break that down and step the massing back to further address, you know, the massing that's appropriate for what's against the residential neighborhood. And then we have the be one level of below-grade parking back here. And then on the next level up, we really still have this connection to Adams Street and Adams Court. And we actually are pulling back an additional 6 feet, so it'll be actually 10 feet off the right-of-way, so a total of 20 feet. And we think that's somewhat important here now that we have this access and throughway and connection from Adams Court, the Adams Court pass-through to the retail. And then, so Franklin Street really becomes an entrance point to the garage, to the garage level, and nothing else. And then, obviously, this is looking down. This is a level above. So that's basically the approach that we're leaning towards, and we're developing right now to come back with some more vertical information, some more specific information about unit counts, mixes, and parking counts.
So it really would be developed in probably 2 or 2.5 phases. You'd build the orange structure along Adams Court first, relocate the tenants from the existing office building over into new space of benefit to them, and then demolish that building, build a garage, and build the residential, the remaining portion of the structure as a phase 2. And so really what we're looking at, as we said to the planning board the other night, what is the most efficient process for us to work with the town on to sort of move to an outcome. Someone had suggested, we hadn't thought previously, but someone had suggested perhaps a 40R district. That would be a new zoning district that would be approved by the town to take advantage of affordability. The town would benefit by getting full credit for the affordability based on the number of units. Obviously, there's a 20% inclusion in the affordability quotient. The town also can access state grants and funds to help mitigate any impacts associated with that. So it's really it's a zoning tool created by statute to encourage towns to locate mixed-use, denser development in areas that can handle it. Certainly with the walkability associated with a number of the amenities nearby, its proximity to bus lines, to transportation, and the ability now to really address parking and parking issues. We think 40R might lend itself as an appropriate vehicle, and we propose to work with the planning board in drafting that. Alternatively, we could pursue standard zoning or variance as an alternative, and then
We've been down 2 of these roads, correct, in the
And we've
past,
been-
right?
So it's a new concept. It's one that people will have to wrap their heads around and arms around. We think it's significantly responsive to issues and things that we've heard, and we hope at the end of the day that the neighborhood and the town can get its arms around it, because the Falcones do intend to move forward with a plan in some fashion or another, and we'd like to do it, obviously, as cooperatively as possible with the town.
Questions at this point? Katie?
I have comments. Well,
Comments?
maybe one question, but comments first. One is, I watched the planning board meeting where you presented this and share a lot of comments that the planning board members made, which is that, you know, well, Richard and I had been on the board since this process got started last summer, and one of the things that we really were trying to encourage was that, and the planning board was with us, we were together, both boards were really trying to encourage the developer to work with the neighborhood, and there was a series of meetings between the neighborhood representatives and the leadership of the East Milton Neighborhood Association and your team. And some of us were at some of those meetings, so I think this proposal that you've come back with, which is substantially different and I think has a lot of improvement, shows that that process has worked, and that the discussions that went on have led to hopefully a better project. Now, we haven't, what you've given us is a conceptual design, and we haven't seen what the building itself would look like, and then I think we still have issues along design. We had a lot of talk during the fall meetings about what we don't want for this location is just something that looks like a big box. We want something that looks like it could fit into Wellesley Square or Hingham or Beacon Hill, or we want a project that's going to fit East Milton Square and make it an attractive building, something that's really going to draw people's support and people's interest, and that will fit in with some of the brick buildings and the character of the square being a smaller community, not a large building. So I'm cautiously optimistic that when you come in with the 3D models and the designs on the 21st, that the design changes that you may be making will be as positive as the concept changes that you've made. It sounded from the planning board discussion as though you have a lot of additional parking spaces, more than what was contemplated for the underground parking. Do you need until the 21st to flesh out those numbers, or are there any details you can provide us tonight on that?
We need till the 21st to really understand the detail, but I think the highest volume of parking that we were proposing previously was somewhere in the 115 spaces. We're dramatically higher than that. You know, probably another 50 to 60 spaces higher, and some of that goes to how high does the garage want to go? You know, obviously, you add a floor, you can add a significant chunks of additional parking. So height may or may not be an issue at the end of the day. It was always an issue. I'm not sure that at the end of the day we will completely solve for height, and that's. I mean, that is a fact. That's a reality. That height will likely be an issue. The question is, how does the new height look compared to the old height, and does height relative to parking and providing significant increase in volume of parking, you know, help to mitigate some of that concern?
Well, I think removing the wall along Bassett Street has been at least a substantial improvement. The height may still be an issue that we're going to have to deal with in design, maybe, but at least opening this building up to the neighborhood, which was one of the concerns expressed by a lot of the neighbors, that the building not have its back to the neighborhood, but face the neighborhood. So I think you've, at least the new concept plan that you've come up with, it seems to me, you know, on first glance here to be an improvement. And then I have a question regarding the 40R and a suggestion. I was talking with the chair of the planning board today, mainly about some Milton Village issues, but we got into this afterwards, because they have a number of zoning matters that Bill Clark addressed at Citizen Speak that they may be looking to bring to the fall town meeting. It seems to me we're almost to June, and if warrant articles are due by August, October town meeting may be aggressive for a project of this nature. And I think we should the board should keep open the idea of a January or February special town meeting to give the planning board a little more time and the neighborhood a little more time to really vet this through. The question I have about 40R, and I didn't have a chance to look at this today, is are we talking, so town meeting would have to be involved in the 40R process, the zoning would be specific to 40R, the town meeting would approve, and then it would go to the DHCD? Is that the process?
Well, I know that the DHCD has to approve a draft of the zoning before it can go to town meeting. It has to be consistent with the requirements of 40R. So I think you're right. I think, given the fact that we're entering into summer, that August, the warrant closes for October. If the board is open to a January town meeting, that's only a couple of months in addition, but it's good time to spend during the fall to arrive at what that zoning would look like. It would give more time to draft it, get it to DHCD for its review and approval, if that's the direction that the planning board and the selectmen would like to go towards, and then have it ready for presentation and approval by town meeting, you know, in the winter.
That's probably even more reason to try to look to a winter town meeting if DHCD has to pre-approve the zoning before town meeting acts.
And October comes very quickly, and it's a difficult time to get things of significant substance through and ready for review and approval by town meeting in October. In my own practice and my own thought about that, January gives you some good extra time, and time when people can focus and they're not off in other places and coming back and, how did I miss that, or what happened?
Right.
How did this happen without my knowing about it? That's a concern for people, I think, and so obviously this is significant. Our goal is to move through a town-led process. Our goal is not to engage in the same process that we went through with the neighborhood. We thought the outcomes were difficult to achieve there. But if the neighborhood can task some who could work with a process led by the planning board, that would be helpful, that we could arrive at something that can work.
Let me just speak to that last point. I don't think we're saying different things, Ned. I think the point I was making about the process having worked was the planning board and the board of selectmen were really looking for the neighborhood to give input into what might be acceptable in terms of a lot of different design features, density, that sort of thing. And that's what I mean about the process having worked, because the boards had several meetings that your team and the neighborhood representatives were at, and what we were contemplating right through the winter and the spring was that there would be a joint meeting. So I think we're on track doing that. And I think the neighborhood input has at least helped yield what may or may not be ultimately at the end of the day, once we hear more details on the 21st, but on first glance, looks like you've at least made significant changes, and it seems to be a positive development.
And certainly, the neighborhood input is critical to the outcome, and it has to be, and we know that.
But it was always going to have to come back to the planning board for zoning to be
Right.
drafted, and for the selectmen in terms of, we were even talking about a special town meeting for this time of year, last fall. So in that sense, the process, I think, is not different. I mean, we needed input, but the boards were, I think, were pretty involved during the fall and the winter, and I think there's been a lot of confusion or misinformation that's been out there about that.
Good. Anything else?
Not at the moment.
Go ahead. I have a couple. Go ahead.
Ned, have you had a chance to reach out to the neighborhood working group, or anyone in the neighborhood
No.
with the new concept?
No, we started with the planning board and this board.
Well, I agree that this is a substantial improvement, and I would just, as you go to design, you've opened it up to the neighborhood, and to take a cue from the neighborhood, not the commercial development necessarily, but the feel of the neighborhood itself as you design, because I at least think that I heard in those community discussions a desire not to look just like a commercial building, but something that would fit in a little more seamlessly with the surrounding character of the residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I live in the neighborhood, as you know, and I've articulated that, and I do think that the communication that has happened, the good and the bad, has led to where we are now, and it has led to those changes, and I think that is good from my perspective, and I have had discussions with the new planning board chair as well as coming to look at this. Some of the things that I've had concerns, clearly the Bassett Street approach is drastically different. Katie, you and I have talked since the beginning, and just for me, even just from a public safety point of view, the stepping back of Adams Court is something I think we really need to seize here if we have the opportunity, because it's dramatic to what that alley, it's an alley. I've been walking it my whole life, it's an alley. And the third thing is the fact that keeping the exit and entrance at the existing Franklin Street, where it is now, versus moving it lower down the hill or around the corner of Bassett, I think is another step in the right direction. But the bigger thing for me here is we have the possibility, and I know we're a long way from this, we have a lot of discussion, is that we're looking to possibly take some of the pressure off from a public parking perspective, depending on what is erected here as far as a parking garage. You know, from this board's responsibility, I think we know, Katie and I definitely know, that parking is a major concern in East Milton. If you see it every day when you're there, if we can somehow leverage this project, not just for the benefit of the people who live there and work there, but for the greater good of the square, I think that's something that's a credible thing to do. And the final thing, and I've said this publicly, and then some people get mad at me when I say it, but from the first time I said it, I can't think of how many people who have approached me, is that there are people who live in East Milton today, as we sit here, who've lived there most of their adult lives, they've raised their children there, and their time has come that they want to sell their houses. They want to not have to cut the grass and do the snow, and they look at this as a possibility for them to be able to continue to live in East Milton. And I think that, as we had the director of the AARP here tonight, as much as we look at youth and business, I think we have to look at those people who've vested their lives in this community and trying to have a place for them that if they want to choose that. So I think all of these are positives, and I think I'll be very interested in hearing from the leadership in East Milton Neighborhood Association, but I also be very happy to have a joint meeting with the planning board and hear this vetted out before them, because to me, they're far more the experts in this than I am.
Mm-hmm. I have
Go
one other
ahead, Katie.
question. One other question, just on the where the parking lot meets the back of the residential building. So is the residential building at that point along the parking garage, is that going to be basically a wall with no windows there, right up against each other?
Yeah, that'll be a corridor.
There will be a corridor.
Yeah, so the way these work is we have two separate structures. One's wood and one is concrete. And basically you have to have a 3-hour or two 2-hour walls back to back. And that's how that typically works. There'll be openings, they'll be protected, have self-closing doors. But yes, the two separate structures. And yes, these two areas you see here, this would be like a double-loaded corridor, so it'd be a corridor down the center with units on either side, and then where it gets narrow here, we have a corridor between where the units would be in the garage. And that would happen here as well.
Okay.
So
you don't need the windows then facing the garage?
Correct, yeah.
That's just a wall.
Yep. So it's a nice typology of building because it does generally result in better yields for parking at more economical prices to build. The precast is generally less expensive than, certainly than parking under a plaza deck, which is probably the most expensive. Having to build those foundations and roof without any yield above. But it also helps to, generally hide the parking garage as well, so.
But the parking garage will be visible from Franklin Street. So will the 3D model on the 21st be able to show us how many stories are you contemplating for the parking garage? Because I'm wondering if this is going to look like.
We're still considering that, but that'll be part of the presentation, yeah. So the only key about the garage you have to maintain is to be an open parking garage, we need to have 40% of the area to be perimeter to be open and 25% of that to be open. So there are some limitations on exactly what the garage would be, and obviously there's options to handle the facades, different options with screening and whatnot. But some of the physical requirements of this are a little different than the parking before.
Because you're going above the ground versus below ground. Am I correct? Right.
Yeah.
It's also, yeah, and the other thing relative to the site is that it makes it a lot easier to address stormwater and other site utilities because you have a fair amount of pervious surface to work with outside of the footprint of the structure.
Now, you said wood for the residential portion of the building. I know there have been comments at some of those neighborhood meetings about you looking like, as I mentioned, an attractive building. There's been some suggestion of perhaps a brick building, and it sounds like you're not contemplating that. I would at least encourage you to think about it, or think about some brick detail, or something that's going to make the building look less like a big box, which was one of the real complaints about the prior design.
Yes, so definitely taking that into consideration, whether, it's brick or some other material. Definitely looking at breaking down the mass with materials, setbacks, different roof types. And, we definitely heard loud and clear that the neighborhood wants something more traditional, a lot more traditional detailing. So, we heard that, so that'll show up in the 3D modeling as well.
Okay. And following up on what Richard said, I think the Adams Court section is one of the most interesting pieces of this development, one that people really, even when they had concerns about the massing on Bassett Street, liked the idea of Adams Court opening up some additional retail possibilities and attracting more people to the square. So that's a very positive feature of this project.
It really has the possibility of giving it life from what it is. And I walked it and looked at it again today, and it's something that definitely warrants discussion.
You're doubling the width.
Right.
Creating, 10 feet of width, additional width to address pedestrian, bicycle, outdoor seating, all of those activities, outdoor plaza, how you enter, because that will now be a primary entry to the retail area on that level. It'll have to look and feel like it wants to have its own real street presence.
Anyone, go ahead.
Just real quick, Ned, do you anticipate having feedback from the neighborhood on the 21st?
We won't have anything to show anybody before the 21st. That'll
Okay.
be the first time we have a chance to really.
That'll be the rollout?
Yeah, they'll be rolling out.
Anybody else? Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you
very
for coming
much.
in. And thank you for continuing to work on this. I know it seems like it's been going on for a long time.
It's the way the development gets done in Milton.
I'm learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Item 10, we're going to have an update on our cable television contract negotiation with Comcast. Who am I deferring to? Mr. Zulus or Mr. Denny?
Want me to go?
Yeah, just very briefly, the RFP was put together by Attorney Solomon, who this board has not met formally, but he met with the previous board during the ascertainment hearing. Mike Zulus has stepped up to replace Mr. Burns as the Comcast representative and can add some insight to this. But the RFP was issued to Comcast of Milton LLC with the intention of having their response submitted back to the town by September 15th, if an informal negotiation cannot be reached by then. So we did sit down one other time with Mr. Solomon, Mr. Jim Segroy from our IT team, and Mike Lynch from MATV, with Kathy Maloney, to continue the informal negotiation. So we will continue to do that, but they should have this RFP in their possession and be working on it in a parallel world.
Thank you. Anything to follow up?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I see the RFP document as really the document that will inform Comcast on the proposed license that they will send to us. So the town is saying in its RFP, this is what we need, and this is why we need it. And then Comcast will respond, and then we'll negotiate from there. On the existing draft, I had some comments that I sent to the attorney today on a couple of issues that, I think that, and the primary ones being, there is going to be an issue about the iNet, which is the government internet that is used by the town government and by the schools, and how that's going to be handled going forward. It's been suggested that Comcast may not want to handle it going forward. And then the question is, what does the town do? And one of the suggestions in the RFP is the possibility of the town building its own fiber iNet and going down that route. And I think, so I've had some suggestions for the lawyer on that. I think our broadband committee, which has also spoken with Mr. Solomon, will have some input on that aspect of it in particular. I think where we're going to need to be on this is to do a little bit more diligence about what it's going to take if we want to go down that road to build a municipal iNet, which will serve the town better in the long run, but we need to make sure what the short-term and the long-term costs of that would be. And I don't think we're there yet on that. And I think my hope is that we'll get some good input from the Municipal Broadband Committee. And, I think we should probably have them in sooner rather than later to get their views on that. And I think they're well aware of this issue, and they've been digging into it. So that's one thing. The iNet is one thing. And then the other thing where I think we need to add a little bit to this RFP, and I've suggested to the lawyer, Mr. Solomon, is a discussion of the residents' view of the products and services. There really hasn't been too much. There's a very good discussion in the RFP of MATV and the needs of MATV. There isn't much in there about the products and services for the residents, and I think all of us know there's been some discontent with Comcast products and services, so I think we need to embellish that a little bit more in the RFP so they understand from the residents' perspective what's going on. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I think, in my view, it needs a little bit more work on those two issues primarily, and then I think we begin the process. Is that fair, Mike? Is that?
Yeah, and a lot of work went into this. A lot of the work that Mr. Solomon did was information collecting, and I had mentioned to this board that he came to one of my department head meetings, and I wasn't really sure when he left the meeting what he was doing, but that's all in the RFP. All that information that he collected from all the department heads as to how they use the iNet or what they use MATV for is now in this RFP, and it's presented to Comcast in such a way that it has value. It has a lot of value in what's being done with MATV now and what could be done with MATV in the future from all the department heads. And the consensus, I think, was a more robust and dynamic investment in MATV would provide each of the department heads more of the opportunity to make it more than just a bulletin board or a news announcement page for them, which was the majority of the people that used it. There's programming that takes place on that, and very good programming, but from a department head perspective, I think we could get more out of that, and Mr. Solomon captured that pretty well in that discussion that I couldn't quite put my arms around at the time, but I appreciate it being in the RFP now.
Very good. Anything else? Any questions?
I have a question for Mike then, because what you said is similar to what came out of the ascertainment hearing, and that was with the prior board. And the challenge there was that basically all of the comments were about
Right, MATV.
MATV and a little bit about the iNet, but really not about residents' service issues or pricing issues. And I guess there was an issue, pricing may not be something we really can address through this RFP process, but other customer issues. So, Mike, knowing that, I guess what would form the basis for putting more into this RFP about the public needs or the public conveniences that we'd like to see from Comcast? Do we have enough information from that, or do we need another ascertainment hearing?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
So you mean more the public as the consumer? No, go ahead.
Yes.
As the consumer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that. That was my question to Mr. Solomon in response to the RFP. It could take the form of an ascertainment meeting, further ascertainment process where you try to get more information, I suppose. There is a process where you can get from Comcast the consumer complaints that have been made. So that, it could take that form as well. So that was my question in response to the RFP, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah, just to add to that, one of the first informal negotiation sittings we had with Kathy Maloney did address some of those issues. Barbara Martin, who ran this contract for her before she retired a couple of weeks ago, that was first and foremost of the stuff that she addressed with Ms. Maloney. It's in her notes from when we met. It was the phone calls we got that the bills show up and they're due 9 days later, and that some of the programming isn't necessarily what the town's looking for. So there was that back and forth. The more recent informal negotiations have talked about, capital dollars and the INET type stuff. So it turned more financial, but it is on their radar. Barbara made that point perfectly clear, that the calls that she was getting at Town Hall were of that nature.
And I don't know, Mike, you probably don't know the answer to this question, but on page 26, the INET locations are listed, and interestingly, most of them are public buildings, but Cunningham Hall and Milton Academy are also listed. And I saw something later on that said Milton Academy may no longer be applicable, but does anyone know why we have two private institutions that are using the INET, which I thought was just the town government agencies?
If I think I can answer the Cunningham part.
Okay.
So Cunningham, we have cameras on Cunningham's property, town cameras, and that's carried through the INET.
Police cameras?
The
or
police
security
cameras,
cameras?
yeah,
Okay.
police cameras, yeah. So, and there may also be some at Milton Academy since I retired, I don't know. But definitely, before I left,
So it's
we
police
installed
related.
at Cunningham.
It's
It could
not-
be, yeah,
it's
it could be,
not
because that,
private.
it's all carried, no.
It's
all
not these private institutions having access somehow to the INET, other than for public
Milton
safety
Academy, I don't
purposes.
know, but I know that the Capitol's done a lot of additional work on the installation of cameras townwide. I'm just wondering if Milton Academy went on, Milton Academy is part of it as well, but Cunningham definitely is.
So we think that's
Definitely,
the only reason they're
yeah.
using the INET.
So if you go to page 28, it references that Milton Academy, the Randolph Ave at Center Street, that location is no longer needed. So
Yeah, I
there's
did
a
see
bit of
that.
an inconsistency with page 26 and 28, but.
Okay.
And I think actually, that reference is that there aren't any there's no drops operational for video return. So that suggests that it may just be cameras, because it's not
At that
videos.
location.
I mean, it's not the TV
All right, that
aspect of it.
explains it. Thank you.
Anything else? Katie, anyone? Melinda? We good? Let's move right along. Let's get into the high-speed lane now. Okay, item 11. Everyone received an email today, I believe, approval of the Good Energy Services Agreement. Do a motion before us? You want to speak to this first, Mike? Or are we good?
Very briefly, the town council has spoken to, this is Mr. O'Rourke who presented at town meeting. This is the municipal energy aggregation article that was approved at town meeting. Town council, John Flynn, has been speaking with Good Energy's attorney and had some questions about some of the language that was involved in 8 or 10 places in the document. Believe that has been resolved, but if not, we could take a vote contingent upon that approval.
I think based on your email today, you were comfortable with the language as it is now? No. No, you're not? Come forward, come right up.
Hi, John.
I recommend some additional language
Okay.
before the board sign the document. Some are form, but most are substantive, and there's an additional comment from Mr. Zulus as well that I agree with. So-
Okay, so want to make a motion, want to make a motion to table this until we have that all worked out?
I move to table the motion with respect to Good Energy Services Agreement.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, any other discussion on that? Anything else you want to add to this, John, based on, other than what we came out tonight? Okay.
No.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item 12, the approval of Race Amity Day proclamation.
I'll move that we approve and sign a proclamation declaring Sunday, June 10th, 2018.
Thank you, John.
Race Amity Day in Milton.
Do I we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 13, we have a couple of recommendations from the Traffic Commission. We have a motion, one motion regarding two locations, Clap Street and Vos's Lane.
I'll move that we install a no parking sign on the northerly side of Clap Street at the intersection of Walnut Street, extending to 20 feet beyond the Council on Aging driveway, and that we amend Article 5, Section 2 of the traffic regulations regarding Vos's Lane to install no parking anytime either side signs on Vos's Lane on both sides of the roadway, alternating at approximately 100-foot intervals.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Go
ahead.
I have a question on
Go ahead.
Moses Lane. No parking anytime either side. I should have, I suppose, driven this today to see exactly what it looks like, but I didn't have time. And I'm wondering what residents do if there are any nearby and they need additional parking for an event or something.
So I can answer that. Anytime that a resident has, something, they can always ask permission to park. It's a simple phone call to the police station. I don't know, because we don't, this is,
I think this is the stretch from Center to Canton.
Right.
That's what I
That abuts the Milton
thought.
Academy property.
Right.
Yeah.
And I believe this may be a proactive move based on something I see being built right there along Vos's Lane. Am I crazy? Is that the location? Isn't it right near
I'm not
there?
sure who brought it up with the Traffic
Okay.
Commission, but that is the location. It's the piece from Center Street that connects back to Canton Ave that abuts all the Milton Academy property.
Okay.
It's my understanding it does not extend across to Brook.
It doesn't, okay.
Yeah, I get that there. It's
Yeah.
not going onto the residential side there.
So it's between Canton and Center?
Yes.
Yes.
And maybe we should just clarify that in the motion.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. So, let's say, so this would be no parking anytime, signs on Vos's Lane on both sides of the roadway between Canton Avenue and Center Street, alternating at approximately 100-foot intervals.
So I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
We all in favor?
I have one more
Up.
question, sorry. Have we heard from Milton Academy?
I don't know, but if that were to be vetted, that would have taken place at the Traffic Commission, not here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, we can vote now.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. It's unanimous. Item 14, approval of Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition donation acceptances. We have 3 of them, and there's a motion to accept all 3.
Two more on the
Oh, actually,
next
more than
page.
that. I gotta go to the next page. It's 5. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the following donations to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. $500 from the Milton Junior Women's Club to support the new Behavioral Health Referral Service interface. $272 from the Milton Rotary and East Congregational Church's Mother's Day Pancake fundraiser. $80 from the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, Milton's sale of medication lock boxes that were purchased with a grant from BIDHM. $4,000 from the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, Milton, to support the new Behavioral Health Referral Service interface. $2,500 from the Milton Women's Club via the Partnership for Healthy Milton to support the new Behavioral Health Referral Service interface. And there's the typo in the motion.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Item 15, the approval of an Eagle Scout Court of Honor and letters of recognition. This is for Troop 5, St. Agatha's in East Milton. They're holding their Eagle Scout Court of Honor on Saturday, June 9th, 2018, at 3 p.m. at Cunningham Hall. We traditionally send letters of recognition for the youth who's achieving this honor, which is on our agenda here tonight to approve, as well as the honorees. If I could have a motion on the approval of this.
I'll move to approve and sign letters of recognition for the Troop 5 Milton Eagle Scout honorees, Nicholas C. Fahey, Andrew M. Friedman, and Joseph Mashella.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to congratulate them. This is a It's one of the things that I always say, an Eagle Scout, it's something that attaches to you in life and never leaves. I was about 9 years old when I was a troop aide and Dr. David Hart became an Eagle Scout, and I've never forgotten that. Every time I see him, I still see him as an Eagle Scout. He was the first one I ever know, so this is a great achievement for the three of them, and on behalf of all of us, I want to congratulate them. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Number 16, approval, ratification of the Milton Foundation for Education 2018 Teacher of the Year. These were presented last week. This was the Foundation for Education held its annual Teacher of the Year awards ceremony last Wednesday. The letters of recognition were requested, and they were written and signed by us, but they still need to be ratified. So if I could just have a motion to ratify the letters of congratulations to the teachers who were nominated.
I move to ratify the letters of congratulations to the following teachers who are recipients of the 2018 Milton Foundation for Education Teacher of the Year Awards: Jonathan Redden, Jennifer Rhodes, Amy Harkins, Ramsey Cadet, Elizabeth Cordes-Manos, Samantha Bullard, and Jennifer Troy.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just comment that it's one of the best events of the year, and Melinda and I were lucky enough to be able to go this year, and to have not only the families of the recipients, but a lot of times their students. They're cheering them on as they give their acceptance speeches. It's without question one of the best events of the year, and all of these recipients are so deserving and so committed, and had such great support from their families and also from the students, and it was just a great event. So.
Thank you, and thank you both for attending. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 17, approval of a year-end transfer request by the Board of Health. We have a motion here to move $4,000.
I move to approve and forward to the warrant committee a request from the Board of Health in the amount of $4,000 from its salary and wage line to its health budget line to purchase office supplies, environmental testing, and food safety equipment needed for health inspections.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Item 18, approval of a one-day liquor license for the Milton Arts Center.
I'll move that we approve a one-day liquor license for the Milton Arts Center at 334 Edge Hill Road for Friday, June 8th, 2018, from 7 to 9:30 p.m. for a performance by comedian Steve Sweeney.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? They're going big time. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 19, the approval of a Board of Selectmen's liaison to the Fire Station Building Committee, and I'd call their chair, Mr. Brian Walsh, to come forward. Surprise to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board of Selectmen.
Thank you for
Great to
joining
be
us.
here with you all. So really, I came because it's becoming increasingly obvious to us, and perhaps to you too, even when we go to town meeting, that as we move forward with this fire station building plan and look at the complexities, it's critical that we be in sync with your board. I mean, the fire department reports to you folks. Any property that we look at, if it's town-owned, certainly is influenced or under your control. And so we would very much appreciate it if you would appoint one of your members. And I got to be honest with you, listen, I served for 7 years on the school committee, and I don't think as a committee you like somebody to come in and say, hey, we want your help, and we're going to tell you who we like it from. However, it's been a long time, so I've forgotten that. With all of the years of public safety experience, we'd be thrilled if we would have the former fire chief and your current chairman
If
as our liaison.
if I was the fire chief, you'd be like...
I'm sorry, police chief, police chief. I have fire on the...
I know you do, I know you do.
But seriously, we'd be thrilled to have any member. We do want to get in sync a lot more closely with you as we deal with some of these complex issues. And we very, very much would like to have a liaison appointed. Whether that liaison attends all of our meetings or just stays in constant communication with us, we can work that out with the person at the time. But there's certainly a lot going on and a lot to keep in sync about.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we appoint Richard G. Wells Jr. as the Board of Selectmen's liaison to the Fire Station Building Committee.
Second. Any discussion?
Do you accept?
I do. I heard this was your idea. Thank you. Listen,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I know how hard you worked on this, and I know how important this is for our community, and I have spent a significant part of my life in public safety, so whatever help I can bring, I'll be glad to do that, so.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Well appreciated. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Melinda. Okay, Town Administrator's report. Wow.
Thank you, Chairman Wells and members of the board. Before I do a couple of updates, I have the brochure in front of me here, of yesterday's observance at Milton Cemetery. I'm sure I'm going to miss or forget someone, but quite honestly, it was one of the best produced observances I've been a part of, from start to finish. The weather could have been slightly better, but the work that Kevin Cook, American Legion Post 114, Paul and Frank Stout, and everyone involved. You get to the cemetery and then you see the fabulous work that's been done by the cemetery trustees and Superintendent Desmond. It was great. All the speakers went fantastic. I think Mr. Cook picked the proper individual to give the address. It was very poignant, and the camaraderie they showed as having been shipmates on the USS Constitution. But from start to finish, Milton Public Schools, the choir, and the band, everything was in sync. All the members of the Fire Auxiliary and Milton Police and Milton Fire Guard, it really was. It was very well attended, both young and old, and I was just proud to be a part of it. It was very good. State electeds, I mean, you name it, you had it there. And I think your chair here gave a very good speech and ended it with a very appropriate plaque for Miss Martin, who spent so much of her time working for the town, but with both Memorial Day and Veteran Day observances. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if anyone else wants to add on, but it was quite a day.
No, I agree. I've been to many ceremonies, and I don't say this publicly very often, but of all the things I've been in my life and the places, I mean, I've been to the Middle East and Quantico, Virginia, so many. I have friends in SEAL Team 6, and I've met Medal of Honor winners and General Dunford, General Kelly. But my one regret in life is I was never a veteran, and my father was one of a house with 5 boys, all served 4 in World War II at the same time, and the youngest brother who's still alive in Korea. And I am also the proud father of a United States Marine Combat veteran, and my oldest daughter, Erin, who did 8 years in the Marine Corps, including tours overseas, where Master Chief Cole served the Anwar province of Iraq, which is a very dangerous place. And when I used the term yesterday about just the simple tweet that came from the United States Marine Corps on Friday was that, and it says it to a T, it's not about hot dogs and hamburgers and parties, those are all great. Memorial Day is to honor the fallen, and this town did that in such a tremendous way. Not just yesterday, in the flag planting, everything. I went to Randolph on Thursday as well, which Kevin oversaw that one. I think everyone in this community should be very proud, and I thank you, Katie, because this was your idea, to recognize Barbara. And Veterans Day and Memorial Day are very special to her, and I think it probably couldn't have happened in a better place. So thank you for coming up with that idea.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Just a couple more announcements. Again, I want to thank the business community and the residents and anyone who travels through East Milton Square, the Adams Street project. It is making progress. The main drainage pipe on Adams Street and all that night work has been completed. There's some catch basins that they're repairing, should take till the end of the week. And then that portion from Granite Ave to Church should be pretty much no longer under construction. They're going to move and take that pipe all the way down the end. Probably looking at another 6 weeks of work before it's completed. But again, thank everyone for their patience. If you get on there today, tomorrow, Thursday or Friday, it's going to be an inconvenience. The police are doing a great job moving traffic through there. And as you know, Chief Wells, it's not easy in a heavily traveled area like East Milton Square. But that project is about 6 weeks left, and the major work, the night work's been done. So a lot of day work going on in the next 6 weeks. So ask for continued support and patience throughout the square.
The benefits will pay off in the end when it's done. It's a lot, but it's,
Yeah.
the benefits will
It's a
be
big
done.
project. If you saw the pipe that came out of the ground, you'd understand the importance of the replacement project. So I thank everyone for that. June
Mike, I just
2nd
wanted to make a quick
Yeah.
comment. If you could just pass along to the town engineer, and I can respond via email too, but those email updates that he provides are very, very valuable. I've had a couple of people on Brackett and Eden reach out, and, to be able to answer their questions informatively and in the moment is great, and it makes the board look good and the town look good, and it's all a result of those emails that are sent out, so thank you for that.
Which I was just reading off of. So, yeah, no, I will. I'll pass that along. Again, it's not an easy public works project. It's just, it's painstakingly slow, but I will pass that on. And they do help. And we've been trying to tweet those out. And I heard it loud and clear with the AARP president, Mike Festa, tonight, that getting information out to people is very important. And we're trying to get information out. We're trying to find all the social media outlets to get information to people. I'm going to try to follow up with Marion Sullivan tomorrow and make sure that she's getting the information that we could just even put on a desk out here in case people are asking questions. But, information nowadays is powerful.
Well, it's easy, clearly, to not send it, and it's also easy to just go through the motions and write something half-hearted, but these emails are very detailed, and they're great, so.
Good. Thank you. Speaking of Public Works, the recycling center is open this Saturday from 9 to 12 at the DPW yard, 629 Randolph Ave. Next Wednesday night, the Parks and Recreation and this board sponsors the summer concert series, which will begin in the gazebo. I believe it's Curra's Fancy, sponsored by Congressman Lynch and Congressman Capuano. It's next Wednesday night on the town green from 6 to 7:30. And you can find that schedule on the Parks and Recreation link on the town's website. Last bit of information is the Milton Police Cadet Exam will take place Thursday, June 21st. I ask that you call Lieutenant Alba at the police station, 617-898-4841. The deadline to... 4814, sorry, excuse me.
I know that number by heart.
898-4814, Lieutenant Mark Alba. If you call the police station, they'll find him. The deadline to apply is June 12th at 9 a.m., and there are some restrictions as to who can apply, but they can walk you through that information. But a great opportunity for someone who's looking to start a career in public safety.
Lieutenant Alba himself was a former cadet.
Many of them.
The chief,
police force,
Lieutenant
right?
West, a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
So, couple of dates to remember for the public. And again, we're trying to get this stuff out through Twitter and.
I saw
and,
that.
Yeah, if anyone has any comments or suggestions, feel free to call me at Town Hall or send me an email. Again, we're trying to get as much information out there to people, sometimes in 280 characters or less.
Anything else?
Thank you, Chair.
That's good? We're good?
That's it.
Okay, so I just want to, just a couple of things. I do want to send out a thank you to our Congressman Stephen Lynch, who took the opportunity this Memorial Day to travel the Middle East to visit with the armed services that are serving there. And this is not his first time doing it, and he makes very hard to try and go to areas and meet with servicemen and women who live in this area, live in his congressional district, and that's a very special thing. It's very special to him. I've had several conversations with him about this, and I wanted to thank him for doing that. Most of you got an email. I think everyone got an email from Diane Ferrari, who's the director of the Milton Residence Fund. I know Katie, knows Diane. Diane's been before this board many times, especially for the new members. I spoke to Diane at length today. What I would suggest is that each of you make time to go and meet with her privately. She carries an increasingly large workload, and when we think of people being poor or really in need, or to many people in this town, I don't think they realize that situation exists, or that problem exists, and Diane does immense work, and this is going to be her final year in that position, and I know she's in your church, Melinda, and I think that we do a lot with them, and I think that it would really be worth it to sit down one-on-one and listen to the programs she has, the residents that she helps, and the issues that she has coming going forward, and how, when we talk about our role as Governor Stoughton trustees, it's the Milton Residence Fund, and particularly the Martin Swift, there's, I think, 3 funds that is really aligned closest with the mission of the Governor Stoughton, of all the things that we deal with here. So it'd be very beneficial to do that, and she would be very grateful to meet with each and every one of you. As far as the retreat, I did get a, where did those come, Emily sent me 3. This is actually a pretty popular thing. A lot of communities do it, so we received 3. Did everyone get that, the same email? I received 3 formats.
Oh, I found them,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, 3 formats to follow as far as having a Board of Selectmen retreat. And one of the key things was it's very informal for discussion but then you don't take votes. There's like the heading on all 3 of them where no votes are taken. So tomorrow we're going to start to put it together, and I want to send it out and let anyone comment and add. I've kind of broken it into things that I view as operational, like things that are day-to-day that press with us. Things that are current, I think, especially for the new members, Katie, that we want to like get them up to speed on. And then strategic things, strategic issues, the committees, things like that we're currently facing, and then anything future that we need, that's going forward. But tomorrow will be broken into specifics. Go ahead.
Just on that point, one of the things that we talked about as being very important to talk about at this meeting is communication.
I have it on there.
5 minutes, okay.
It's already on there.
It didn't sound like it was, so if that's on there, that's good. That, and I think the goals and objectives we talked about at the last meeting.
So communication, I have that like as under operations, things that, the way we function, like we work daily, our day-to-day operations, and communication is clearly key of it. And that was actually the first thing I talked about when we first talked about this.
I think
so.
that's going to take some time.
I do too.
We'll have to, I just
Yeah.
want to be sure we're setting aside
Yeah.
enough time for that.
So I think more the day-to-day and the current things, and maybe some time to discuss future strategic things going, because I think ideally, if this works well, I'd like to come back and do this again in, another couple of months, if that'd be amenable to everyone. I've given, President Quigley's given us an area just for ourselves to have this meeting, and he's, I can't thank him enough. He responded right away, and it was graduation weekend. I said, email me next week, and he emailed me right back. And so we'll see everyone there Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Okay. Other than that, I just want to give a thank you just to Dr. Spaulding at the Pierce School. I was invited to their career day. There were many parents there, and it was mostly parents who put it together. And but I had a great time with all 8th graders. And as Sarah presented tonight, they have some unique perspectives on what they want to do and what they want to. So I love that school anyway, I always have. And so big shout out to them. And all the parents who put that together did a great job organizing that. So and all that, that's it. So we'll go to members' reports. So I guess we're going to start with the vice chair.
Just very quickly, Policy Committee is charging ahead. We're going to have our first meeting on Monday, and we're going to, on the agenda is some policies for Board of Selectmen procedures and vehicle use, and social media for boards and committees. So we'll hopefully serve those up with all deliberate speed, and maybe we'll have something ready for you at the next meeting. One suggestion, we may want to consider at some point having a meeting, as we've had a couple of meetings here now, we may want to consider having a meeting at the studio in the high school to see how that works. That's just a suggestion going forward. And the last thing, on the Memorial Day, it was great to see everyone. There was a great crowd there, but Korean War veteran and longtime town meeting member Dan O'Connor was there, and it was great to see him there. And I just want to give Dan a shout out because it was great to see him, and looking great, doing great. So.
And we got him out of there in style. He rode
got-
the
he-
cemetery
that's exactly
Kubota.
right,
He
yep.
did, we got him in style. Madam Secretary.
Well, the Housing Committee, or what might be the Housing Committee, I should say, actually, met with Cheryl Tagayas last week. And so we'll have a little update, I suppose, perhaps when we talk about committees. But we too are exploring what the housing committee could be and what kind of work it could do, and the constituencies who might be involved. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is a letter I believe we all received a copy of from 2 6th grade students. And I just want to make sure, has everyone seen that?
I don't
Okay,
think I've
well,
seen it.
Unless it's on the
Marie
calendar.
Laura Brown also told me they came to her class and did a program with her students around a garden that they would like to
Yes,
put in near
and it was
Turner's
like
Pond. And I
golf
just
course.
want to make sure that this, that we address it in some way, because apparently they did a wonderful job and they're very serious about this. And I think that we need to have them in and hear them, and if possible, I don't
So
know
I
how
have-
that works.
I have one question, that was my thought when I read it. Is that on property that we have jurisdiction over? I'm not
Right,
sure.
I think we need to,
Yeah, I'm not sure we
I think
have
we
the
need to talk
jurisdiction over-
about those, yes, I know we need to look at the details, but it would, I just don't want it to fall off the radar screen, so that we at least get back to them.
You're not looking to shut them down, are you, Richard?
No, I just want to, no, listen, I've learned how parochial things are here. Guys, I'm just,
So may I follow up
Sure.
with Emily about this then, on behalf of the board?
sure,
Is that, okay,
absolutely.
all right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Sure,
Yeah.
thank you. Katie, anything?
I wasn't going to, but since we're thanking a lot of people and groups here, a lot of us were at the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition's recent meeting, and there was a very impressive group of high schoolers who spoke, and I thought they did a good job, and they brought a lot of issues to everyone's awareness, and it was a good session, so thank you to the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition for that session and all of their other work.
Just to follow up to that, July 1st is coming, and recreational marijuana and all the things that go with it are going to be for sale. And if my wife spent the weekend as the incident commander at Boston Calling, and if you saw the medical reports today, one of the biggest issues of patients being treated is edible marijuana overdoses. So this is going to affect our community, whether we sell it here or not. It's going to, and it's something that, particularly, I've had this discussion with Caroline and Laura a little bit, that this is coming in July, and it's going to flood our markets very quickly, so.
Yeah, and actually on that note, that reminds me that Melinda and I attended the MMA, the Selectmen's Association regional meeting a week or two ago, and the topic was marijuana. And
Right.
even though we've got bylaws now in place that ban recreational marijuana facilities,
Sales, yes, facilities,
there's
yeah.
still a lot of issues that are going on at the state level with the Cannabis Control Commission putting out some regs, and a lot of issues that other communities are facing. So it was a pretty interesting discussion, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot more coming to the forefront as we go through the next several months.
Yes, and the following day, I went to the Avon Coalition's workshop on marijuana, and looking at the data that's now coming out of Colorado, there seems to be some clear correlation, if not causation, between legalization and a really concerning increase in the use by youth.
It's true.
So,
Tony?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, citizen speak response. Any response? Mr. Cox spoke tonight, but do we have, no, he's gone. Any response to that? Anyone? Okay. Future agenda items. So that'll come out tomorrow in the afternoon, and please add. I want to try and deal with as much of the day-to-day stuff that is facing us right now versus futuristic stuff, because 4 hours really isn't a lot of time.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Absolutely.
tomorrow is Wednesday.
Yep.
If Saturday is not considered a business day and we're to start at 9 a.m., then this agenda needs to be posted tomorrow by 9 a.m.
Okay.
That would be good for me Friday, 9 a.m., so probably by the end of the day tomorrow, so it's a full business day.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. We're good
Would
tomorrow. right?
Thursday at 9 suffice?
Thursday at 9, yeah, Thursday at 9. Thursday at
Okay.
9, Friday at 9, yeah.
Or does the clock strike midnight at midnight Friday night? Is Saturday, the 9 hours of Saturday morning considered?
We'll do it by tomorrow evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a couple of things for future agenda items, just that.
Go ahead.
To add. One, we talked the last time about the fall town meeting articles, so I think we're gonna
Right.
need to add that to the summer agendas. Two others, the Governor Stoughton funds.
Right.
And as acting as Governor Stoughton trustees, I'd like us at some point, it doesn't have to be in the near future, but at some point, we're gonna need to get some professional advice
agree.
on managing the, not only the 5.3 million, but add that to the few $100,000 that we had remaining in that fund. And I think, since we have requests now from the Affordable Housing Trust for $2.5 million, and we're looking at a group supporting, I'm not sure what the name of the Milton Residence Fund, I guess, is what it is,
Right,
the trustees
right,
of that,
right.
who are going to be coming and looking to us for, I think it's gonna be on a permanent basis, looking to fund some additional support
Right.
for Diane Ferrari's position. I think we need to get some kind of advice going forward as to how we should be managing this fund, because obviously it's a lot of money, but it has to last, we hope it will last for a long time, to serve the needs of the poor in the town. So I would like us to, at some point, have a discussion about that and maybe consult with a financial advisor. And then the last one is the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I sent an email just attaching the links to the wharf study and
I
the
read that
zoning
today,
study to
yeah.
everybody. The committee is very close to finishing its work. We're not quite there yet because we're waiting on a traffic analysis, and we have some follow-up going on as a result of the hydrographic study, but we're expecting to be finalizing that this summer, and the committee will want to come in and meet with the board. The board's also going to probably hear from the Historical Commission, because the Historical Commission is looking at historic districts, and they've asked the Master Plan Committee for support, which we did vote to support. So that's a process that the selectmen would be involved in creating a historic district. I think it's called a commission, that would do some study, and presumably members of the Historical Commission would be appointed to it or would have input into it. So they're going to be the proponents of that, coming to us seeking our approval to do that. So
Steve is.
Steve
He-
O'Donnell.
Steve's. So, on the, going back to the MPIC, I'll leave that to you to decide when they should come here. That's what I think. I mean, you're the,
It may be the late June or July
That's fine.
meetings that,
I'm fine with that.
before we'd be ready. And what would be coming to us would be the wharf piece of it.
Okay.
The zoning would go to the planning board.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all.
We good? Anything else? Anyone? Okay, so at this time, we're going to enter an executive session. So can I have a motion? And this is your first, this is our first executive session, it's 5. So if I can have a motion, and then I will do a roll call of each member.
The chair usually makes the
All
motion.
right, so I'll make the motion that, see, I'm learning as I go. To enter an I'm going to make a motion to enter an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, 525 Adams Street, 509 and 515 Canton Ave, 815 Blue Hill Avenue, and strategy with respect to litigation, engagement agreement for opioid tort litigation participation, Massachusetts opioid litigation attorneys believing that having such discussions in open session would have a detrimental effect on the negotiation or litigating position of the board, and a return to open session only for the purposes to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Farrington? Yes?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Conlon? Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
It's unanimous. We're in executive session.
Challenge the